Hear ye, court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Thompson presides.
You may be seated. We have before us today the case of the State versus Citizen Capet on the charge of treason. And if found guilty, he would be executed. We will first hear opening arguments, and we will hear first from the prosecution team, and that will be Citizen Zakowski.
Citizens of France, 100 years ago, the people of France naively welcomed the ascension of Louis of Bourbon to the throne of the cursed French nation. 100 years ago, we hoped that the reign of Citizen Capet would be the usher in a new age of freedom, virtue, and prosperity. 100 years ago, however, we were gravely mistaken. Instead of being the blessing for which we had all hoped, Citizen Capet was a scourge on the French people. Over the course of Louis's despicable reign, our nefarious king has repeatedly, knowingly, and grossly violated the fundamental rights of the very people he swore to defend. Citizen Capet, instead of aiding the impoverished French people, squandered the money of the defenseless and overtaxed citizens. While the people of France struggled to live in their filthy mud hovels, Louis held extravagant parties in his massive palace at Versailles. While the people of France taxed themselves in backbreaking labor just to survive, Louis sent his wicked attendants to collect exorbitant taxes. While the people of France begged their leaders for bread to give to their starving children, Capet and his despicable bride Marie left their subjects to eat oven scum. When Louis exhausted the resources of the overburdened French people, even he was forced to admit that he had brought ruin to our once glorious nation. In summoning the Estates General 3 years ago, Louis acknowledged the sovereignty of the French people. Despite his admission, Capet continued to work against the improvement of France. When the deprived French people of the Third Estate asserted their God-given right to improve their estate, Louis barred them out of Versailles. Instead of submitting to Louis's tyranny, the brave French people took their tennis court oath. When the French decided to create a constitution to guide their state, Louis moved to force his people into submission. Instead of submitting to Louis's tyranny, the brave French stormed the oppressive Bastille. When it was grossly apparent even to Louis that he could no longer force his people into submission, he cowardly turned to stratagems to impose his rule on the French. Louis took his constitutional oath to be faithful to the nation's law, which he has repeatedly broken. Louis unlawfully bribed officials to enhance the already generous powers granted to him by the French Constitution. Power-hungry Louis also invited foreigners to invade France and restore his power. Louis directly paid counter-revolutionaries to fight against the liberation of France, and he has repeatedly spilt the blood of Frenchmen on several occasions. When Louis's plans could no longer reverse the accomplishments of the French people, he cowardly fled the country, making his counter-revolutionary sentiments grossly apparent. Even after Louis was deprived of his kingship, he continued to work against the French people. When the people of France, rightfully outraged by Louis's despicable actions, stormed Louis's Tuileries palace, Louis mechanically ordered the execution of hundreds of Parisians. Louis's efforts still threaten France to this day. Indeed, the foreign armies Louis invited to invade France threaten invasion any day. Thus, Louis has thrice violated the Constitution he swore to defend, and, accordingly, Louis has thrice renounced his crown. Louis renounced his oath to uphold the rights of the French people. Louis invited foreign armies to invade France to restore his power, and Louis fled the country, leaving the area allocated to him by the French people. Without his crown, Louis must be tried and must be given justice as a citizen of France. Citizen Capet's reign has not been the reign of progress that France has needed, but rather a reign of tyranny, oppression, and gross injustice. While Louis lives, the old regime of squalor, injustice, and repression lives. While Louis lives, the nation of France cannot realize its potential and assume its glorious destiny as a leader of the free peoples of the world. While Louis lives, France dies. Therefore, the French people demand Louis's blood and demand that Louis be sent back to hell from whence he came. People of France, this I plead of you today. Consecrated with Louis's blood, assume your rightful place as free men and fulfill your constitutional oaths, to live free or die.
Thank you, Citizen Zukowski. We'll now hear from the defense. Citizen Sharma.
France has undergone and is undergoing a great period of turmoil, rebellion, and revolution. France was in a great deal of trouble, though, prior to these events, and there is no doubt that France will progress further, thanks to them. Those earlier troubles, though, are being tried in this courtroom here today, and our King Louis XVI is being wrongfully accused as the cause of them. Our king, however, was not the authority behind all of these actions that created the problems which led to this revolution. In fact, Louis was not even in control of his own responsibilities and was being manipulated by other factions in the French system. The basic question that stands to be answered in this courtroom today is this: was King Louis XVI guilty of any illegalities during his reign here too? Not only is King Louis innocent of these charges, but the problems that had arisen in France occurred prior to his reign and were in no way effects of his actions. Power was taken away from him, and he could not help but watch as other parties slowly but surely weakened France and brought it to the state where a revolution became apparent to the people. There are many general reasons as to why King Louis XVI is being blamed for these problems. One was his inability to fully administrate the legislative system of France. This was not his fault, though. The parliaments often blocked his reforms and attempted to push their own agendas for greater power in French politics. Another major spark for the revolution was the financial crisis that France had fallen into. A major aspect of this, though, was the corruption of the taxation system. This aspect was out of Louis's control, and staying within his limits, he did not try to meddle with the political affairs that were outside of his control. King Louis's predecessors also created many problems that were difficult for him to fix himself. These made him appear to be at fault, but the troubles had already been existing before he came into power. After King Louis finally accepted that he could not fix these problems himself, he decided to finally call the Estates General into committee to aid in him helping France fix itself, primarily financially. A quarrel sparked in that meeting, though, outside of Louis's powers again, and the disagreement soon developed into the revolution we are experiencing now. Due to the impacts of these external events, King Louis is being wrongfully blamed, but is not at fault, and should be found innocent by the jury here in this trial. Thank you.
Thank you, Citizen Sharma. We will now hear the prosecution's case. Please call your first witness to the stand.
Your Honor, the defense calls to the stand Arthur Young.
Please left hand on the Bible, right hand in hand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Can you please state your name for the record?
My name is Arthur Young.
Can you tell the court a little bit about yourself?
I am an English traveler, and I have traveled extensively throughout Great Britain and France, and have written many books on my travels.
Do you recognize this document?
I do.
And did you write that?
I did.
Can you please present Exhibit A, Arthur Young, that travels in France? Can you read this highlighted passage for the court, please?
This great city, Paris, appears to be, in many respects, the most ineligible and inconvenient for the residence of a person of small fortune of any that I have seen, and vastly inferior to London. The streets are very narrow, and many of them crowded, 9/10 dirty, and without foot pavements.
So, based on your writings, can you tell us how you believe France compares to Great Britain?
I believe Great Britain is much more prosperous as a nation.
Can you please read for the court this highlighted passage?
Excuse me, where? Sorry.
This passage.
People almost as wild as their country, and their town of Comberg, one of the most brutal, filthy places that can be seen. mud houses, no windows, and a pavement so broken as to impede all passengers, but ease none. Yet here is a chateau and inhabited. The poor people seem poor indeed, the children terribly ragged, if possible worse clad than if with no clothes at all. As to shoes and stockings, they are luxuries.
So how do you find the state of the peasants in the French nation?
Peasants are in very poor condition. They sometimes live in mud homes, and many of them do not have any clothes at all.
So do you believe that the living conditions in France were vastly inferior to living conditions elsewhere in Europe?
I do agree.
All right. Can you please read these two? The first
To
one.
what are we to attribute this differences in the manners of the lower people in the two kingdoms? To government.
That's it. So, to whom do you blame the poor condition of the French peasants?
I blame the government of France because it is their duty to ensure the prosperity of their nation.
Can you read these two highlighted passages?
The Capetiaries were a dreadful scourge on all the occupiers of land. By this term is to be understood the paramountship of certain districts granted by the king to princes of the blood, by which they were put in possession of the property of all game, even on lands not belonging to them. There were numerous edicts for preserving the game, which prohibited weeding and hoeing, lest the young partridges should be disturbed, steeping seed, lest it should injure the game, mowing hay, for a certain time so late as to spoil many crops, and taking away the stubble, which would deprive the birds of shelter.
So, how do you find the state of a French noble compared to the state of a French peasant?
There is a great difference. The nobles live in great poverty, sometimes in mud homes and without clothes, and the nobles lived on grand chateaus and in country homes and are exempt from all taxation.
And you found that the king was responsible for upholding these extravagant noble rights?
Yes, they are in close contact with the king.
And do you believe that these rights vastly impeded the lives of the peasants?
Yes.
All right. Can you please read the second article of the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen? And can you please present Exhibit B to the court?
The aim of all political association is the preservation of the natural and imprescriptible rights of man. These rights are liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression.
And do you believe that the rights of the nobles and the poor state of the peasants violated the security and their economic security described in the second article?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Now, you wrote this book, Travels in France, in 17 from your trip from 1787 and later, correct?
Yes.
You had never been to France prior to this. Is that also correct?
I had not.
So you have no idea what France was like before the reign of Louis XVI.
No.
So, for all you know, it could still be bad, but it could be worsening. It could be getting better. While it may still be bad, it may be getting closer to good and closer to what England was like.
This is true, but at the moment that I was there, at the time I was there, it was in a very poor condition in the city of Paris.
Now, to commit treason, you must be purposely making it worse. But yet, if you are not sure that he's making it better, how can you place an opinion on this? And how can you be sure that Louis XVI is actually committing treason?
I can be sure because I have seen no improvements in the city of Paris, even though I know the king has promised improvements.
Okay, also, you also said that the nobles were much richer than the peasants, correct? So wouldn't it also be, as a human being, their moral obligation to help the peasants?
Yes.
So wouldn't the nobles also be committing treason against the peasants and not upholding the rights of the peasants?
No, because the king is responsible for the nobles and the peasants. The nobles are not in control of the country.
Okay. I'm not sure about that because I think when you say that when you have a moral obligation, that you are also taking ownership of what the peasants are doing, and by not helping the peasants, they are not filling their obligation.
The nobles have a moral obligation, but the king has the principal obligation to help the peasants.
Okay. Also, in your book, you said that the king's garden were not very well kept, and the spending on the preservation of these gardens was grossly overstated. Is that true?
Yes.
So, doesn't this show that he was not spending as much money as was believed, and is one of the things that people say he is committing treason for? so that by not spending money, he is not committing treason.
Well, yes, if his garden is well kept, that shows that he's not spending money on his garden, but he's still not helping the peasants.
But one of the major complaints against Louis XVI is that he's unfairly spending money for himself, yet your book completely contradicts this point.
Yes, he may not be spending money for himself, but it was evident during my travels that he was not spending money to help the peasants' current
But
situation.
on the other hand, you did say in your book that many peasants in the rural happy were very happy and that there was an extreme appearance of rural happiness.
Those may have been in some areas, but in Paris, I was clear when I said that they were in very poor condition.
But isn't it the king's job to protect and to uphold rights of everyone in the country and not just in France?
Yes.
So then by overall helping the peasants in France, isn't he not committing treason and doing his job as king?
When I was in France, it was not evident that he had been helping the peasants when I saw them out in the streets in mud homes.
But you
Last
just
question.
But you just said that when you saw them in rural areas, they were happy, and you agreed to that. And now you're contradicting yourself. Doesn't that affect your credibility as a witness?
Paris is not a rural area. Paris is a city in the central city of France. The peasants in the central city of France were in a very poor condition.
You may step down. Please call your next witness to the stand.
Your Honor, the defense calls to stand Marie Antoinette. The prosecution calls to stand Marie Antoinette.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please do.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Yes, Marie Antoinette.
Miss Antoinette, can you please tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm of Austrian descent. My mother is Maria Theresa. My brother is Leopold II, current king of Austria, and I am the current queen of France and Navarre, and my husband is Louis XVI.
And over the course of your over 20-year reign, do you acknowledge that you squandered French money on things such as court intrigue, clothing, and the construction of palaces?
I do not consider those purchases squandering the money, but I do not deny those.
Do you think it was appropriate to waste French money while your citizens are impoverished as described by Arthur Young?
No, I do not.
And why did you tell your peasants when they begged for bread that you would not give them any bread?
I felt at the time that they were greedy.
Do you believe that not helping your peasants economically, wasting French money, and refusing to give them bread violates the economic security described in the Declaration of the Rights of Man, as we just heard?
I suppose.
Do you believe that you're an immoral queen?
No, I do not.
Can you please read this passage from Historical Essays on the Life of Marie Antoinette, Exhibit D, please?
A lover was then necessary. He had to be handsome, kind, and avowed. Everybody argued about this pregnancy. The women who were around her did not forgive her for having a lover.
If you claim that you were a moral queen, why did you have several affairs, including one with Axel Person?
How dare you say that? I deny that I had any affairs.
Can you describe your involvement in the diamond necklace affair, please?
I was not involved. Rather, I was tricked by Jean Delamotte, who tricked Cardinal de Rohan.
If you were tricked, why did you arbitrarily imprison Rohan for a mistake that you made yourself?
You should never have believed that I would have gotten that necklace from Jean Delamotte. You should never believe that I was in the affair.
But how could Rohan, a citizen of France, know that you would not have an affair if you have had several before in your past?
Once again, I deny that I had affairs, but I could see how it could be misconstrued by his part.
Do you believe that the arbitrary imprisonment of Cardinal Rohan violates the rights described in the Declaration of the Rights of Man, Article 2?
He was imprisoned before that document was written. But could you repeat the question?
Do you believe that it violates these rights?
What are those rights?
Can you read for the court Article 2, please?
The aim of all political association is the preservation of the natural and imprescriptible rights of man. These rights are liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression.
Do you believe that your arbitrary imprisonment of Cardinal Rohan violated these rights?
Now that I think of it, yes.
And If these rights were, quote, natural and imprescriptible, did they not exist before you acknowledged this document?
Not in writing, but they did exist.
Therefore, do you admit that the arbitrary imprisonment of Rohan violated his rights and was wrong?
Yes.
Miss Antoinette, do you support the French Revolution and the gains of the French people?
Yes, I do.
Then why have you repeatedly condemned the French Revolution?
I have not.
Do you recognize this letter that you wrote to your brother, Leopold? I'd like to present Exhibit N to the court.
Yes, I do.
And can you please read the highlighted passage?
The armed forces have destroyed everything. Only armed forces can repair the situation. The king has done everything to avoid civil war, and he is still very much convinced that the civil war cannot correct anything and that it shall, in the end, destroy everything. If the opposition to the armies of the great powers were to arise, there would be rather no difficulty in returning things to order.
So, in this letter, do you admit that you believe that the revolutionary forces were ruining the country and you invited foreigners to invade?
Yes.
Do you believe, as the husband of King Louis XVI, that your opinions reflect his?
Yes, I would hope so. Our philosophies are similar.
Therefore, would you say that your husband would hold a similar opinion of the revolution?
Yes, I know he did.
Can you... Can you please read Chapter 2, Section 1, Clause 6 of the Constitution?
If the king places himself at the head of an army and directs the forces thereof against the nation, or if he does not, by formal statement, oppose any such undertaking carried on in his name, he shall be deemed to have abdicated the throne.
As you just said, your opinions reflect your husband's. Therefore, did Louis in any way oppose the invading armies?
No, he did not. He welcomed them.
How were you involved in the flight to Marennes on the 21st to the 23rd of June, 1791?
It was not a flight. Rather, my family and I, we were taking a vacation, and we were stopped outside of Rennes. We hoped to visit Austria and the Netherlands, where I had formerly come from.
If this was a vacation, why did you not have your customary escort of National Guardsmen, but rather an escort of counter-revolutionaries?
We felt it unnecessary.
Why, according to a decree of the National Convention on July 15, 1792, was the Marquis de Boulay going to have counter-revolutionary forces meet you partway through your journey?
I was unaware of these arrangements. Fine.
Can you please read Title 3, Clause 1 of the Constitution?
Sovereignty is one, indivisible, inalienable, and imprescriptible. It appertains to the nation. No section of the people, nor any individual may assume the exercise thereof.
Therefore, since sovereignty lies in the French nation, and the nation deemed that Marquis de Boulay was supporting your flight, do you deny these arrangements?
No, I do not.
Did the people of France, sovereign under the Constitution, demand that you remain in Paris on October 4th, 1789 with your family?
Yes, they do.
Do you believe that this flight violates Chapter 2, Section 1, Clause 7 of the Constitution? Which I'll have you read right now. The highlighted part of Clause 7.
The king, having left the kingdom, does now return after invitation has been made by the legislative body and within the period established by proclamation, which may not be less than 2 months, he shall be deemed to have abdicated the throne.
Do you believe by leaving the city of Paris, which the people of France demanded that you stay in, violated the right of this clause of the Constitution?
Yes, you can see that one.
Therefore, the multiple violations that you've described in your testimony of the Constitution, especially clauses 5, 6, and 7, do you believe that Louis has abdicated the throne as provided by those?
According to those documents, it's not enforced.
No more further questions.
Cross-examination.
Now, in your opinion, is Paris the entire kingdom of France?
No.
So then how come by leaving Paris, Louis would have abdicated his throne?
He wouldn't.
Then how come just in the direct examination you said he did by leaving Paris?
We were going to take a vacation. So therefore, we were on the edge of the border when we were caught.
But you were still in the kingdom, on the edge of the border, he was in the kingdom.
Yes, we were.
So then how did he ever abdicate his throne? Or were you mistaken?
I guess that was a mistake.
Also, you contradicted yourself 3 times during your direct examination. So how can we be sure that anything you said is true? If you flip-flop 3 times in the span of just several minutes.
How am I supposed to answer that question?
Would you like me to rephrase?
Yes.
You contradicted yourself 3 times in the direct examination, which just lasted several minutes. So why should we trust a thing that you said?
So I'm the Queen of France.
And queens have never lied before.
No, it's not true.
Okay, so then how come your answer to my question is valid? That I'm the Queen of France, so I didn't lie.
Because that is honest opinion.
But if you gave 2 different opinions for 3 different questions, how can we trust anything that you said?
What were those 2 different questions?
First, on the issue of Cardinal de Rohan, whether or not he was imprisoned justly. Second, on whether or not he supported the revolution. And finally, on the flight to Varennes. You gave 2 different answers 3 times.
But they were 2 different questions.
No. First, on the flight to Varennes, first you said that the king should not abdicate his throne. Then you said he should have. On Cardinal de Rohan, first you said he was imprisoned justly. Then you said he wasn't. And then on the revolution, first you said you're for it, and then you said you were against it.
I said it was for the revolution.
And then afterwards, you said you were against it. That your letter showed that you were against it.
I said
Badgering the witness.
Overruled.
We'll move on from that point, I guess. You also said that you and Louis agree on, since you felt this way, Louis felt that way on certain issues, including the revolution.
I said I believed our philosophies were similar.
Have you and Louis XVI ever disagreed on anything?
Of course.
So then how do you know you don't disagree on this issue?
Because this is not a mere family issue, this is a statewide issue.
And you always agree on every single statewide issue?
No, but I stand by most of his philosophy.
Okay. Also, you said to your daughter one year that you could not buy her any Christmas presents because you had spent all your money giving back to the peasants. Do you remember that?
No, I do not.
Last question.
Okay, last question. And by giving all your money away to the peasants, and also by cutting the household staff, and by always bringing peasants into free meals at Versailles, how can you say that you were mean to the peasants and that you were overspending?
I cannot.
No further questions?
You may step down. Please call your next witness to the stand, which may be the last one for today.
Your Honor, the prosecution calls to stand Charles Bomer.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Can you please state your name for the record?
My name is Charles Bomer.
Can you give us some background information on yourself?
I am a Parisian jeweler, and my partner and I, Monsieur Bassanges, make many expensive pieces of jewelry that we sell to clients in many parts of Western Europe.
Can you tell us a bit on how you were involved in the diamond necklace affair of 1785?
Well, the Cardinal Louis de Rohan of France acquisitioned the necklace on behalf of the Queen Marie Antoinette on February 1st of 1785.
Do you recognize this document, the memorandum to Her Majesty the Queen concerning the diamond necklace affair?
Yes, I wrote this.
Can you introduce Exhibit D to the court? And when did you write that?
I wrote this in 1786.
And you wrote to the Queen concerning her involvement in the diamond necklace affair?
I did.
All right. How much did the necklace cost?
The necklace cost 1.6 million lire.
And have you ever received any payment for the necklace so far?
Yes, we have received only 30,000 lire in payment thus far.
And you were promised payment when the necklace was acquisitioned?
Yes, we received a note from the Cardinal of Rohan on behalf of the Queen Antoinette, promising full payment in installments.
Can you please read the underlined passage that continues on to the second page?
He told us that the necklace was too expensive for the Queen. Her Majesty had the intention to give it back to us unless we considered lowering its price to 200,000 lire. A few days later, he told us that Her Majesty had accepted our last settlements, and instead of receiving 400,000 lire, we would soon receive 700,000 lire.
So, did the Queen follow through on her promise to pay you 1,600,000 lire?
No.
And have you received a bit of what the Queen promised you,
Yes, we've only received 30,000.
but not the 700,000 that she promised?
Not anywhere close.
And do you believe that Marie Antoinette, as a Queen of France, with all the resources available to her, could afford to buy a 1.6 million lire necklace?
Yes, I believe she could afford it easily.
Do you believe that the price of 1.6 million lire is exorbitant and too much?
No, for this necklace, it cost us a lot more money than 1.6 million lire to make it. Therefore, this price is not that much.
And could you have received the same payment from other people?
Yes, we denied the Spanish courts many times this necklace, but we wanted to reserve it for the Queen of France.
Can you please read the highlighted passage for the court?
We were filled with sorrow and consternation after hearing this. We had committed ourselves to several creditors after the prince had assured us that we would receive the first payments from Her Majesty.
So how did Marie's refusal to pay for the necklace hurt your business?
Well, after we received the note from the Cardinal of Rohan promising payment, my partner and I went out and bought many more products for more clients. And without these payments, and after our purchase of our products, if we do not receive these payments, my business will go bankrupt.
Can you please read Chapter 2, Section 1, Article 3 of the French Constitution?
There is no authority in France superior to that of the law. The king reigns only thereby, and only in name of the law may he exact obedience.
Thank you. Therefore, according to the Constitution, do you believe that the king was exempt from his legal obligation to pay for the necklace?
No, I do not.
Do you believe that the queen, even if she was tricked, as the Queen of France with a duty to help all the French people, could have helped you out?
Yes, I believe even if she was not directly involved, she has a responsibility to her French people and her French businesses to help them out, even if she is not directly involved.
Do you believe that the queen should have imprisoned Cardinal Rohan, even though he was tricked?
No.
No more further questions, sir.
Cross-examinations.
You first made this necklace for Madame du Barry, correct?
Yes.
However, Louis XV died, and so you asked Marie Antoinette to purchase it, correct?
Yes.
But she never said yes to buy this from you.
This is true.
And then you gave it to Cardinal de Rohan to give to her.
Yes.
So you never actually saw, or could be 100% sure, that she actually bought it and she actually wanted it.
We were told by the Cardinal of Rohan, who was a very close accomplice of the Queen, that she wished to purchase it.
Have you ever heard someone lie before?
Yes.
How could you be sure that this guy wasn't lying?
I had every reason to believe that he was of good nature and that the Queen genuinely wanted to purchase this necklace.
But as a salesman, isn't it your duty to be 100% sure that this is going to the person that you think you are selling it to?
Yes, but I believed a man of such high honor and regard as the Cardinal of Rohan would have the honor to give this necklace directly to Marie Antoinette and go along with the transaction that we had arranged.
So the higher up the person is, the better chance that he's telling the truth?
I believe that since he was so close to the Queen, that she had told him directly that she wanted to purchase the necklace, and I had every reason to believe this.
Okay. Also, when you saw her at a social event, you once asked her to buy it because if you didn't sell it, you said, I would be ruined, correct?
Yes.
And then, is it physically possible to break up the diamonds in this necklace and to make smaller necklaces.
With great effort, it is possible.
So then, isn't it true that with another option on the table, you actually never would have been ruined?
I suppose.
So you blatantly lied to the Queen of France.
No, I did not.
Yes, when speaking to her, you said you'd be ruined, and now that you're speaking to me, you're telling me that you wouldn't have been ruined.
Objection, leading the witness.
Overruled. Answer the question.
No,
So you were not blatantly. So are you blatantly lying to me then?
I am not.
But if you're giving two different answers to the same question, you need to be lying to someone.
The necklace can be pulled apart and made into smaller necklaces with great effort, but it is not to be done so.
Well, you're telling me ruined means that there's no way you can do anything, correct? No way you can do anything to get out of this financial hole, correct? But if you do have a way to get out of the financial hole, you couldn't have been ruined.
We made the necklace to be sold as the necklace. We did not make it to be broken up into smaller necklaces. If the necklace was sold, or if the necklace was not sold as it was, as its price, yes, we would have gone bankrupt.
Have you ever made something that did not get sold?
Yes, all jewelers have.
Okay, so why couldn't this just be one of those things that you changed?
This necklace is not one of those things. This is a 1.6 million lira necklace made specifically for the Queen of France.
But you said you've dealt with royalty before, that you're one of the most famous jewelers in Western Europe, so I'm sure you've made things like this before.
Not of this nature.
This is the first time you ever made something like this.
This big and of this grand of a price.
Okay.
Last question. Two more, because we're almost done. Two more questions.
Okay. You also said that by not selling this one thing, you would go completely bankrupt, correct?
Yes.
But I would expect that as a jeweler to most of Western Europe, you would have quite a large income over a year, and in your pocket right now, just based on the way you're dressed. So don't you think it would have been possible for you to be able to advance past this point?
Well, no, because we purchased many more items after receiving a promise of payment from Cardinal de Rohan from the Queen. So without receiving the payment for this very expensive necklace, we would have gone bankrupt.
All right, you may step down. Guys, great job for the first day. Very well done. All right, thank you, audience. Thank you, parents, for coming. Ah, Shad's in the house.
The all-star witness. There he is. Okay, guys, let's get dressed quickly so you're not late for your next class.
Can you please state your name for the record?
I'm John Baptiste Drouet.
And can you give us a bit of background information on yourself?
I am the posting master of Saint Menopole, the French town.
And are you sympathetic to the French Revolution?
Yes, I was with the revolution.
Do you recognize this document? The prosecution would like to introduce you to that. And can you explain it?
This was my testimony to the National Convention of the events happening on June 21st to 23rd of 1791.
Can you explain what happened on Tuesday, June 22nd, 1791?
To a company of dragoons whom I suspected were counter-revolutionaries.
And how could you be so sure that the people in the carriage were the King and Queen of France?
I recognized the king by his face printed on an assignat I had in my possession.
And what did you do the night of the 22nd?
That night, I gathered my colleagues and we rode through the forest to Varennes.
And what did you do the next day when you arrived in Varennes?
That day, we alerted the townspeople, were able to create a blockade outside of the town, and subsequently apprehended the king and queen.
All right, can you please read the highlighted passage? Move down to the next page.
The district attorney questioned the travelers who were they, and where were they going. A lady replied that she was the Baroness de Court. She said she was a foreigner and that she was on her way to Frankfurt. She was in a hurry and hoped that she would be allowed to pass. Asked if she had a passport, she said yes, but she did not think it necessary to have it examined. We insisted. While the passport was being examined, I said to two ladies that I could not believe that the Baroness was a foreigner. I presumed that it was the king and the queen who were on Berlin. They then went to the house of the district attorney, where they confessed who they were.
So based on your testimony, how can you be so sure that the royal family was just not going on vacation rather than fleeing?
The Queen was using a fake passport and fake identity. I do not think that these a routine vacation necessitated such precautions.
Can you please read Chapter 2, Section 1, Clause 7, the highlighted part of the Constitution?
Yes. If the king, having left the kingdom, does not return after invitation has been made by the legislative body, and within the period established by proclamation, which may not be less than 2 months, he shall be deemed to have abdicated the throne.
If the people of France demanded that Louis stay in the city of Paris in 1792, do you believe Louis's flight out of Paris violated this clause?
Yes, I would say so.
And you believe Louis was fleeing the country?
I do believe he was fleeing the country.
No more further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Now, is it, in your opinion, do you think it's illegal for the king and queen to go on a trip, a vacation?
I do not think it's legal for them to go on a vacation.
Also, being a king and queen, there's probably a lot of hoopla and a lot of things going on when they go on a vacation, correct? There's a lot of people who like to see the king and queen, they are royalty after all.
Yes, I agree.
So maybe if they wanted a relaxing vacation, maybe they'd rather go out as just some commoners or just some nobles so they wouldn't be recognized. Isn't that possible?
The legislative body had demanded they stay in Paris at this time and not think they were going on a vacation.
Would you just, that was not my question. Would you answer my question?
May you repeat the question?
Absolutely. Maybe, isn't it possible that they wanted a relaxing vacation and so went under a false identity?
It is possible, unlikely. So,
What makes you so special that you know what is unlikely for the king and queen?
after we accused them of leaving the country, the king then confessed that they were indeed the king and queen of France and were trying to leave the country.
You have a written testimony saying that they were planning to flee the country.
I do not have a written testimony.
So can we be really sure that you're just not fabricating all of this stuff as you go along?
I gave my oath to tell the truth. I'm not lying to you.
Has anyone ever lied before a court in the history of France?
Yes.
So how can any one of these jurors be sure that you're just not another one of those people lying?
I cannot be 100% positive.
No further questions, Your Honor.
You may step down. Again, lawyers, point of order, make sure you don't have your back to the audience, because we have people here in the room now so they can see and hear everything. Please call your next witness to the stand.
The prosecution would like to call Matthew Babu. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Would you say your name for the court, please?
Francois Claude Amour.
And would you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm the governor of 3 provinces in France under Louis XIV. I'm also the commander-in-chief of 3 armies.
All right, and you were an advisor to the king, is that right?
Yes, I was.
And what was one suggestion that you gave to him during the French Revolution?
I recommended that the king flee to Varennes, a small border outside of France.
And also, what other part did you have in this fight?
I stationed troops along the border to help them get across the border.
And then, according to the Constitution, which was read, under Chapter 2, Clause 7, isn't this against the violation, against the Constitution, claiming that he abdicates his throne?
Yes, it is.
And then that means that Louis can be tried as a French citizen and not as the monarch. Is that true?
Yes, that is true.
Isn't it also true that you've been bribed by Louis?
Yes, I have been bribed. I'm not serious.
And then, also, under Louis' orders, did you put down any revolts that Louis has asked you to?
Yes, I put down revolts. Louis advised me to put down revolts. And they occurred.
Now, how could you prove this. Is there any proof that he asked you to do any of this?
Yes, I sent him invoices that should be located in on board the fair.
So in his safe, he has actual documents that he ordered you to put down revolts and to violate the Constitution under his command.
Yes.
No further questions?
Cross-examination.
As an advisor to the king, it is your job to do what the king says, correct?
Yes.
And he told you to put down 3 revolts because he saw that in the best interest of the country, correct?
Yes.
Now, wouldn't it be better for France to be unified rather than having multiple revolts which would stress the army and leave France open for invasion?
Yes, that would be right.
So then how is he committing treason by asking you to put down revolts?
Because he shed the, by doing this, he sheds the blood of people.
But if he did not commit these, if he did not squash these revolts, wouldn't the revolters kill some other people who are allied to the king, which still leaves bloodshed?
Repeat the question.
If you did not stop the revolts, wouldn't the revolters probably attack many people allied to the king and kill them, leading to bloodshed?
Objection, your Senate.
Rephrase.
In many of these revolts, many of the revolters were armed, and they were going to most likely kill many of the royalists. So by not stopping these rebellions, wouldn't there still have been a lot of bloodshed?
Yes, I suppose that's it.
Objection, the witness can't foretell the future.
Sustained.
Also, you said that he bribed you. What did he give you?
He gave me money for my services.
But as a minister, aren't you paid for your services?
Yes, I am, but
So how is paying you actual bribery? Isn't it his job to pay you?
he really wanted my services, and at times I was distraught over the decisions that Louis made. He wanted me to further exposition of my services.
So he paid you because you were a little unsure whether or not he was making the right decision?
Yes.
But as a minister, isn't it your job to do what he says?
Yes.
So by not necessarily listening to him, weren't you committing treason against the king?
I don't think so.
Why? But you're not following your job. Isn't that you're doing exactly the opposite?
Objection. Our witness is not on trial. It's the king.
I'll allow this. Continue.
But by not doing your job and doing, isn't that committing treason?
I was doing my job.
But no, you were just going to not. You were planning on not doing what he asked you to do, which is the definition of treason, doing exactly what you're not told.
I was never planning on not doing
But
what he told me to do.
he paid you in order to make sure that you did what was best for the French people. If he didn't pay you extra, you wouldn't have done it and thereby committed treason.
No, but I not like some of the decisions that Louis made. I was going to try and convince him to.
No further questions. You may step down. Please call your next witness to the stand.
Your Honor, the prosecution calls to stand Louis Charles d'Herville.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do.
Please state your name for the record.
My name is General Louis Charles d'Herville.
And what is your position in the French government?
I am the commander of the Swiss Guard of Louis XVI.
And what is your nationality?
I am Swiss.
And the nationality of your men?
My men are Swiss.
And therefore, would you consider yourselves mercenaries for Louis XVI?
Yes.
Can you please read Chapter 2, Section 1, Clause 12, this the Constitution?
The king may choose the men of his guard only from among those who are at present on active service in the troops of the line, or from among citizens who have served for a year as National Guards, provided they are resident in the kingdom and have previously taken the civic oath.
Did your troops fit this requirement?
No.
Therefore, was Louis violating the Constitution by keeping his Swiss Guard?
Yes.
Where were you posted in 1792?
At the Tuileries Palace in France.
And how many men were posted in your guard on August 10th, 1792?
Approximately 5,000 men.
Can you please read Chapter 2, Section 1, Clause 12, the first line?
Apart from the guard of honor furnished him by the Citizen National Guard of the place of his residence, the king shall have a guard, paid out of the funds of the civil list. It may not exceed the number of 1,200 infantry and 600 cavalry.
Thank you. Did Louis' guard of 5,000 men on August 10th, 1792 exceed the number allotted to him by the Constitution?
Yes.
And therefore, was he violating the Constitution?
Yes.
Were you men under the direct command of Louis on August 10th, 1792?
Yes, he inspected the guard at 5 a.m. and told us to defend the palace against the revolutionaries.
And do you engage the revolutionaries on August 10th, 1792?
Yes, we were forced to.
How many revolutionaries did you kill?
Approximately 384 of them.
Can you read Clause 2 of the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen?
The aim of all political association is the preservation of the natural and imprescriptible rights of man. These rights are liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression.
Did the killing of 384 men under the orders of Louis violate this clause?
Yes.
And as commander of the troops, was Louis responsible for the killing?
Yes.
No more further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Now, you just said that by you killing approximately 384 men, King Louis XVI violated a clause in the Constitution. Exactly why do you believe this?
Because he gave the orders for us to defend against the revolutionaries, and therefore he is responsible for the deaths that occurred that day.
Now, if you chose not to fight, and they still bombarded into the palace, don't you consider it very likely that they would have killed some of your men, or maybe even the royal family?
Yes.
So, by having you fight, he made sure that your and the Swiss Guard's right and his family's right to life and guaranteed by the Constitution were upheld, correct?
Yes.
So in reality, no matter which way you fought, someone's rights would have been destroyed, correct?
Yes.
But so this is really not against the Constitution because some people's lives were still saved.
I believe it is against the Constitution because per his orders, the blood of Parisians were shed.
But if his orders were to not kill, to not fight at all, they still would have killed people, and thereby he committed, in your opinion, he would have committed treason by breaking the Constitution.
Objection. The Swiss don't have any rights in the Constitution.
Sustained. And is this witness an expert on the Constitution?
No, but he's giving an opinion on the Constitution.
He is, but... Continue.
But the royal family has a right to life, and every right guaranteed in the Constitution. And by not fighting, and certainly very probable that the royal family's rights would have been destroyed, and thereby he would have caused treason against his family. Correct?
Objection. Can't foretell the future that the royal family would have been.
Rephrase.
Also, how long have you and the Swiss Guard been hired by France?
A good amount of time.
Prior to 1791, has the Swiss Guard been hired by France?
Yes.
So really, isn't the Constitution null and void on this point because you've already been hired by Louis XVI?
No, because he gave us the orders that still violated the Constitution no matter how long we've been in service. His orders, no matter when they are given, and no matter how long we've been in service, still violate the Constitution.
Last question.
But this is a matter of ex post facto, that this law was instituted after you had already been hired, so thereby you and the Swiss Guard are still allowed to defend France. Right.
If we are given the orders to defend France, we will defend France.
You may step down. Please call your next witness to the stand.
The prosecution calls to stand Jean-Baptiste Pierre.
Left hand on the Bible, right hand on the head. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
What is your name?
Jean-Baptiste Pierre.
And tell us a little bit about yourself.
I was the former servant and valet of Louis XVI.
And then what object was given to you by Louis XVI what object was given to you by Louis XVI to keep secret from outsiders?
He gave me a key.
And do you know what these keys opened?
He opened the armoire d'affaires.
And what is the armoire d'affaires?
It is a safe located in a wallet in the master's bedroom that has important documents.
And what are these documents? What was on these documents?
There were certain letters from Prussian and Austrian kings about foreign affairs and certain counter-revolutionary activities.
So these papers show links between King Louis XVI and the kings of Austria and Prussia? What did Louis say when asked if he gave you the keys?
So he did not give me the keys.
So he denied ever giving you these keys and lied?
Yes, he did.
Well, did he hand you these keys?
Yes, he did have these keys.
So he was lying?
Yes.
So he denies ever having contact with the armoire d'affaires that incriminates him violating the Constitution?
Yes.
And were these documents in the safe written by Louis and under the possession of Louis?
Yes, they were.
No further questions?
Cross-examination.
You said to the court that the king lied to you, but how can we be sure that you're not the one lying? Do you have the keys?
No, the court constated and he gave me the keys and he said that he said to the court that he did not hand me.
But the king hasn't spoken yet, so how could the king have told the court that?
He said court so people that he handed the keys.
But talking to different people is not the same as talking to the court. So you've already lied in front of this court.
Objection, the witness is not on trial.
We'll let the jury determine if he's lied.
Also, isn't it a king's duty to talk to other kings and other monarchs from other countries?
Yes, he can certainly do that.
So how is it incriminating him that he has something, a letter he's written for another king?
Because these letters had something about the king's him composing a foreign invasion on his own country.
So you have opened this safe.
I have not opened the safe, but
And how do you know what was in the safe?
the king was told me that he heard about what was in the safe.
So, but what you've heard is hearsay. So it's not valid in this courtroom.
Objection, we presented several documents.
Well, we're trying to see his direct, trying to get his direct knowledge of this, so you have to answer that question.
So everything you've talked about these documents, these letters, is complete hearsay, right?
He's told me about
But it's still hearsay because you heard about it from someone else.
He said the king told him. He said the king told him. That's not hearsay.
But you already have said that the king has lied to you once before about the key, correct?
Yes.
So couldn't he be lying to you again? Correct. No further questions.
You may step down. Please call your next witness to the stand.
The prosecution would like to call the guy who's read pages.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm the Baron of the Fifth.
Is it true that you were also
This witness has been exiled by King Louis XVI. So
He wasn't exiled, he was sent to seek foreign assistance. You can prove that in several documents that we present in this witness.
Even if he's exiled, what's your point?
that he can't be in France. But
Arthur Young was not in France
Well,
either.
we've allowed him to come back to testify. Continue.
Is it true that you helped the king's attempted flee to Firenze?
Yes, I was the one behind that plot.
And then, weren't you also granted the position of Prime Minister of Foreign Affairs by Louis XVI?
The king gave me that position to deal with France's foreign affairs.
And then, what Louis did order give you to deal with these foreign affairs?
He asked me to talk to the European monarchs to see if they would help with his counter-revolution.
And do you have proof?
Yes, in a letter he sent me.
Could you please read the highlighted part of this letter?
Exhibit J.
Monsieur le Baron de Peyrefitte, I have chosen to provide the interests of my crown to you. I am sending you this letter as a symbol of plenipotential powers and authorization vis-a-vis the various powers with whom you may have to deal with on my behalf. I approve everything that you do to achieve my aims, which are the restoration of my legitimate authority.
This was signed by the king, was it not?
Yes, it was.
So, and how did you carry out the orders that Louis asked you?
I did approach certain European monarchs and ask them to help the counter-revolution.
So, but I thought the French Revolution was for the people, and he had helped it at first.
The king did not support the revolution and wanted to restore his monarchical authority.
And why would he do this?
He felt that his loss of authority was a blow to his dignity and pride.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
now, revolutionaries talk about religious toleration as one of their key platforms to help the common good of France, correct?
Objection to the witness would not know about religious toleration.
I think the ideas of the French Revolution are fairly widespread and you know.
Sustained.
Now, okay, you were, wasn't the storming of the Bastille only about 5 days after you became Prime Minister?
It did happen 5 days after, yes.
Okay. And so isn't it certainly feasible that they were, they were protesting your appointment as Prime Minister and not Louis XVI's role as monarch?
Objection. He can't see into the minds of other people. He can't.
Rephrase.
Do you believe that people in France were protesting you becoming Prime Minister rather than the king?
I do not believe it was my appointment as Prime Minister, but the disposal of Jacques Necker as Prime Minister that caused the storming of the Bastille.
But so you feel that no matter who they replaced Necker with, they would have still stormed the Bastille?
I believe we mistimed the event, yes.
You mistimed the event of King Louis XVI, mistimed the event of reappointing a Prime Minister?
Yes.
Okay. And also, in exile, you were basically an ambassador to France, to the foreign monarchs, correct?
Yes.
And isn't it your duty to do what you feel is best for France and create as many allies as possible?
The king directly ordered me to talk to foreign monarchs to help with the counter-revolution. That is what I did.
So do you believe that the revolution will hurt France if it succeeds?
I believe I'm only doing my job. The king ordered me to help the counter-revolution.
But as a Frenchman, wouldn't it be your duty also to make sure you personally do not commit treason against France and hurt France?
I support the king.
So you are against the revolution?
Yes.
So why exactly are you against the revolution?
The king should be the supreme ruler of France, not the people.
Do you feel that the king is a better leader than the people, or that France will be more powerful under the king in the future?
Relevance.
No, I'll allow this. Go ahead.
Do you feel that France will be more powerful in the future under Louis XVI rather than under revolutionaries?
I believe the king was able to lead France.
but in the continuing into the future, and pass into the present, into the future, will the king still be a better leader than the people?
Objection, you can't see the future.
Sustained.
But
Stick to the facts, counsel.
no further questions.
You may step down. Please call your next witness to the stand.
Your Honor, the prosecution calls to stand Frederick William II.
Nothing in the Bible or anything. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Proceed.
Please state your name for the record.
Yes, I'm Frederick William II, King of Prussia.
Can you give us a bit of background information on how you're involved in the French Revolution?
Sure. I'm a supporter of the counter-revolution, and I was urged to support by Louis XVI, as well as other monarchs such as Leopold II, King of Austria, and French nobility such as the Emigre, Count d'Artois, and the Duke of Bourbon.
Do you recognize this document, Panama Circular, to H?
Yes, I do.
And can you explain it?
Sure. This is the letter from signed by Leopold II, King of Austria, and he's showing his support for the counter-revolution, and I agree with it.
And can you please read the highlighted passage?
Sure. I therefore propose to you, as I proposed to the kings of Spain, England, Prussia, Naples, and Sardinia, as well as to the Empress of Russia, to unite with them and me to consult on cooperation and measures to restore the liberty and honor of the most Christian king and his family, and to limit the dangerous extremes of the French Revolution.
Thank you. And do you recognize this letter, Exhibit I?
Yes, this is a letter that Louis XVI sent to me, urging me to join the counter-revolution and send force.
Can you please read the highlighted passage?
Sure. I have just addressed myself to the Emperor, the Empress of Russia, and the kings of Spain and of Sweden, and presented to them the idea of a Congress of the principal powers of Europe, supported by an armed force, as the best manner to check the factions here, to give the means to establish a more desirable order of things, and to prevent the evil which afflicts us from being able to take possession of the other states of Europe.
So based on Louis' correspondence to you, would you say that he urged you to support the counter-revolution?
Yes, he sent numerous letters to me, desiring me to invade into Paris and try and reinstate him on as the king of France.
And Leopold II also urged you to join the counter-revolution?
Yes, he did. He also sent me numerous letters. And his sister, Marie Antoinette, he was influenced by his sister.
Do you recognize this document? Exhibit J?
Yes, this is a Declaration of Independence.
Can you please read the highlighted passage?
Their Majesties, the Emperor and the King of Prussia, jointly declare that they view the situation in which the King of France currently finds himself as a subject of the common interest for all of Europe's sovereigns. Consequently, jointly with their respective majesties, they will use the most efficient means in relation to their strength to place the King of France in position to be totally free, to consolidate the basis of a monarchical government that shall be as amenable to the rights of sovereigns as it is to the well-being of the French nation. In this case, then, their said majesties, the Emperor and the King of Prussia, are resolved to act quickly, in mutual agreement, and with the forces necessary to achieve the proposed and common goal.
And both you and Leopold II of Austria signed this?
Yes, we did.
And you were urged to do so by Louis' ministers, such as Bretul and Louis himself?
Yes, we received letters.
And how did you specifically participate in the counter-revolution?
After I had signed my name to the Declaration of Independence, I sent a group of men, troops to be exact, to be led by the Duke of Brunswick, who also led Leopold II's force.
And Louis urged you to do this?
Yes, he did.
And he in no way told you not to invade France?
No, he did not.
And do you believe that Louis is partly responsible for the loss of thousands of lives at the hands of your army?
Not directly, but he had invited us in, and
Because of its invitation, we did lose men, and so indirectly, yes, you can do.
And can you please read Chapter 2, Section 1, Clause 6 of the French Constitution?
The king places himself at the head of an army and directs the forces thereof against the nation, or if he does not, by a formal statement, oppose any such undertaking carried on in his name, he shall be deemed to have abdicated the throne.
Did Louis, in any way, in a formal statement, oppose your action?
No, he did not. Not in a formal statement. Written.
But rather he urged you, right?
Yes, he did.
So do you believe that this violates this clause?
According to that document, yes, it does.
No more further questions?
Cross-examination.
Now, the King of France has a divine right to the throne, right?
Yes, he does.
So by aiding Louis XVI, weren't you doing the work of God?
I do not consider
Objection. Louis XVI signed the Constitution, which gave him power to the state, not through God.
Where are you going with this?
Can I just have one or two more questions?
Where are you going? You have to explain where you're going with this line of question.
I'm trying to show that he is, Frederick William II is aligned with God and doing God's cause by helping Louis XVI.
Why?
I think it would help our case.
All right, continue.
Would you like me to repeat the question? Do you feel that you were doing the work of God by helping King Louis XVI reclaim his throne?
No, I do not. I believe that I was acting in my own country's best interest, as I believe that the monarchy in France would be better for my people.
And do you believe that you were acting for the best interest of French's people?
I do not know that. I'm not sure of what they would believe, but I know for my people it's the best interest.
But do you feel that at some points in time, the common people do not know what is in the best interest of their country?
Objection. Hearsay.
There's
No.
no hearsay.
Overruled.
Can you repeat the question?
Do you feel that at certain points in history, the common people do not know what is in the best for their country?
I'm sure at some point they have.
So couldn't this revolution be a perfect example of this? That the people really don't know exactly what is best for their country?
Can you repeat the question?
Couldn't the French Revolution be an example of when the common people do not know what is right or what is wrong for their country?
The common people were who were leading the revolution, and I would not be aware of that, as I am not amongst them.
But you have invaded France.
Yes, I have.
And so you have probably received many letters from your army on exactly the progress going on.
Yes, I have.
So you have a very good understanding of what's going on in France right now, correct?
I have a pretty good understanding of it.
So, and you know exactly what the revolution is about, otherwise you wouldn't invade it.
Yeah, we invaded in the first place to support the monarchies in Europe and to keep the chief leaders of each empire.
So you should know then whether or not you think the common people, the revolution, the common people know in this instance whether or not a monarch is the best idea for France.
From what I've heard, I believe the French people think that a republic is the best interest for them.
But in your opinion, do you feel that the people know what is best for them in this situation?
In my opinion, I believe the people probably know what is best for them, or else they wouldn't be acting on what they're doing.
So then you are acting against the French people by invading France?
I'm supporting the king. I'm not acting against the people. I'm supporting my.
But you just said that the people of France know what's best for them and that they don't want a king.
I'm only supporting the king's and the monarchy's ideas. I'm not, in no way am I against the people besides the fact that I'm invading France to restore the monarchy?
And do you think that if you do not invade France and a republic is allowed to be created, France would be in a worsening shape?
I believe that could be the result.
Okay.
You may step down. Please call your next witness to the stand.
Prosecution would like to call the Allen.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
State your name, please,
I'm Baptiste Malcolm.
and tell us a little about yourself.
I'm a member of the National Convention and a French lawyer. I also took part in the drafting of the Constitution of 1791.
So would you call yourself an expert on the French Constitution?
I would.
Could you please read under Title I, this line, starting from third persons?
That similar offenses shall be punished with similar penalties without any distinction of persons.
And could you also read Chapter 2, Section 1, Clause 3?
There is no authority in France superior to that of the law. The king reigns only thereby, and only in the name of the law may he exact obedience.
According to the two clauses you just read in the Constitution that Louis signed saying he would accept it, that he is not above the law.
Yes, the Constitution specifically states that the king is not above the law.
So he should be able to be tried for the.
I object. Relevant.
That's completely relevant. It's saying that he can be tried for what he committed.
Well, obviously we
know he
believe
can be
that
tried.
as he's being tried right now.
I think that this is more else.
We're not arguing whether he should be tried.
We're arguing whether I commit treason.
Okay.
All right.
I'll keep going.
So he can be tried for what he committed.
Yes, he can be tried for the Constitution.
Could you read Chapter 2, Section 1, Clause 8?
After express or legal abdication, the king shall be classed as a citizen, and as such he may be accused and tried for acts subsequent to his abdication.
And now with that in mind, please read Chapter 2, Section 1, Clause 6.
If the king places himself at the head of an army and directs the forces thereof against the nation, or if he does not, by a formal statement, oppose any such undertaking carried out in his name, he shall be deemed to have abdicated the throne.
Now, did Louis oppose the kings of Prussia and Austria when they were decided to invade France?
He did not oppose.
Did he also not send Swiss General de Hurley against Frenchmen of his own country?
No.
So that means that Louis abdicated his throne.
Yes, he has deemed to have abdicated his throne.
So under the Constitution, he would be tried as a French citizen. And could you please read Chapter 2, Section 1, Clause 7?
If the king, having left the kingdom, does not return after invitation has been made by the legislative body, within the period established by proclamation, which may not be less than 2 months, he shall be deemed to have abdicated the throne.
So because Louis attempted to flee to Reims, even after being ordered by the people and the legislation body of France to stay in Paris, that he has abdicated his throne?
Yes.
So once again, he could be tried as a French citizen and has no power as the French monarch.
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Now, you were one of the many people who voted for a war against Austria, correct?
Mm-hmm.
But at this point in time, Austria had not invaded France, correct?
Yes.
So wouldn't this be a preemptive war against a foreign power?
Austria was threatening France, though. It was largely wrong that they were.
Hasn't England been threatening France for years, but have we waged a war against them?
Austria was a direct threat and causing lots of damage to the country.
Do you think that England could cause a lot of damage against France if they wanted to?
If they wanted to.
Objection, he's not an expert on England, he's an expert on the French Constitution.
But he has gone into the realm of Austria being a threat, so I will allow this.
If they wanted to, England could
war.
So then, based on your reasoning for attacking Austria, shouldn't France wage another war with England?
At this point in time, Austria is the direct threat to France, not England.
But if Austria has done nothing against France to this point in time, how can they be a direct threat?
Objection. The prosecution has introduced several letters and declarations indicating that Austria has opposed.
But at the point of the vote, when he voted for this war, none of this was.
The declaration
None of this was known.
sent the letters to the Prussian king and exhibits.
But he's trying to determine the time frame before that.
He voted before all of this became public.
Continue.
Can you please restate the question?
But since Austria has done nothing against France, how are they a direct threat? When you voted, Austria had not invaded or done anything against France. So how can you classify them as a direct threat?
Austria is much closer in proximity to England, and at this point in time, they were the immediate threat to our country.
If you look at England's not that far away. It's just about the English Channel. Not it's very slim. It's just a short boat ride, and they're right here in France.
So does this go to prove that Louis opposed invasion in any way?
I think we'll let the jury decide that. Continue.
So, isn't it certainly very possible that considering the financial crisis that France is in right now, that by attacking a foreign power preemptively, you yourself were committing, and everyone who voted for this war were committing treason against France? That by attacking a foreign power preemptively, which you voted to do, and considering France's financial crisis and its overextension, isn't it certainly, weren't you committing treason against the good of the French people?
Objection, the witness is not on trial.
You already went through this before. You're saying,
Well, but you are asking if you committed treason, and we're not trying.
we did that earlier.
I know, but I accepted it earlier because I didn't think it was really putting that witness on trial. Why don't you rephrase, that's a sustain, you can rephrase the question in order to get away with it.
So by attacking Austria, a foreign power, preemptively, isn't it certainly possible that you committed treason against the French people?
Well, it's not attacking the French people.
No, you were causing treason against the French people.
I do not believe that I caused treason by law.
Okay.
You may step down. Please call your next witness to the stand.
Your Honor, the prosecution rep.
Prosecution rests with 10 minutes left. Okay, very good. We're on schedule here. All right, the defense will now present its case. Please call your first witness to the stand.
Your Honor, the defense calls Marie Antoinette to the stand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Just take a moment to record, please.
Marie Antoinette.
Tell us about yourself.
I was born in Habsburg, but I'm now loyally Bourbon as I'm married to King Louis XVI.
In your opinion, should your husband, King Louis XVI, be found guilty of treason?
I believe not. He loves France with all his heart, and he would do nothing, absolutely nothing to harm it. And all his interests are aimed to be the best interests of the whole of France.
Have you and Louis been concerned with the national debt of France during your power?
Yes, I mean, we have been concerned. I mean, the financial crisis of France over the century has caused many strong blows against France, and is a big problem to solve. I'm not an expert in finance, but I have always encouraged Louis to pursue economic reform.
Going with that point, do you think he did enough to try and solve these financial problems in France?
He did everything in his power that he could. He tried to pass economic reforms, but the assemblies and the States General most of the time blocked these reforms, and so the nobles really were the ones who were behind the prevention of the solution to the crisis.
Did Louis ever try and go beyond his power and manipulate the nobles to allow his reforms to be passed?
No, he did not want to. He didn't want to exercise his power against the French people because, again, his interests are for the French people, and he would not ever try to force anything that was too brash.
Concerning the flight to Varennes, why exactly did you try and flee?
Well, we love our family and our son, Louis XVII. We felt that that the situation that we were in wasn't very good for him with all the activity going on with the revolution, and we thought it might be safer to get away for just a little bit, so that so that our family could rest and sort of recuperate.
Did you ever mean to offend the French people or to appear as traitors by fleeing the country?
No, we didn't. We were simply taking a little break because we feared for our lives. The mobs were too pressing, and we weren't leaving France and we weren't leaving France or leaving the throne. We were just simply taking a break, and we were not trying to offend any French people.
What exactly occurred during the Diamond Necklace affair?
Cardinal de Rohan and Nicole de Olivia, they had impersonated me and our ministers and tried to buy a diamond necklace in my name, which I did not commission. I did not have anything to do with this diamond necklace. Unfortunately, though, all those costs were levied on me, and it was a tough decision for me to either pay for it because, or not pay for it because obviously we were trying to help out the French economy and help the peasants and the French people. So it was the necklace was quite a large cost, and it was a hard decision whether to continue with that or to continue helping the peasants.
There was a rumor that this was done because you had a romantic relation with Cardinal Rohan. Was this true?
This is not true. I did not have sexual relations with that man.
Have you played a major part in the policies of your husband, King Louis?
I have tried to be a supporter of him, although I am no expert in war, finance, or foreign affairs. I support him and all the decisions that he makes, but unfortunately I cannot exercise any power in those affairs.
So you would not consider yourself his advisor?
No, unfortunately not.
Concerning religion, what do you think about the current state of the Church's interaction with the revolutionaries?
Well, first, I did not support the passing of the civil constitution of the clergy. The French people wanted to change with this revolution, and referring back to a mixture of church and state will be going back to the old ways. So, in effect, the constitution of the clergy, it was sort of counteracting their current revolution, and really the involvement of priests in property and governmental affairs is outright wrong, because in effect we are taxing God, and this goes against it.
What did you think of the Assignat system?
The Assignat system, I did not agree with it, because we are taking away church's land and giving it to the nobles, and this is not right, because again, church and state mixture is not good for this country.
And what was your opinion of the civil constitution of the clergy?
I did not support it, because again, priest involvement in the government is not necessary. The religion is a big enough topic by itself, and if we involve them with government, it'll just confuse the whole system.
What was your opinion of the new secularized calendar?
I didn't really appreciate it because it would be taking away holidays, and French people work hard enough as is. The secularization of the calendar, it just made things more confusing for them.
Do you think that in these policies, the revolutionary government was expressing the beliefs and the wishes of the people?
In many aspects, yes, they were, but in also many other aspects, no, they were not, because much of the revolution was too extremist, and the French people simply wanted to change from the old ways of the past monarchs, and sometimes this revolution would counteract their desire.
For the sake of the courtroom, did you ever say let them eat cake?
No, I did not. That was a rumor created by the rebels in order to help their case.
Is there anything you need to add?
Yes, that Louis is an honest and innocent man. He did not do anything to go against the French people, and his best wishes are with them.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
So, Miss Antoinette, you claim that you constantly tried to help French finances during your and Louis' tenure in the French authority.
That's correct.
So why was your nickname Madam Deficit?
Because often people would like to play the blame game, and since I and Louis and the rest of the royal family often would indulge sometimes, then the blame fell upon us.
Why would you feel it's appropriate to indulge yourself while your peasants are living in mud hovels, as described by Arthur Young?
Well, these indulgences that we had, this was before the revolution. When the financial crisis became apparent, we realized that we were part of the deficit, and we began to make up for it. We cut down household staff. We tried to fix the taxation crisis.
If you're trying to fix a taxation crisis, why did you fire two able ministers, Necker in 1781 and Brienne in 1789, when they just tried to publish the royal finances?
Because they were very competent ministers. We know that, and unfortunately, they were just not able to convince the States General and Parliaments to pass these reforms that we wish to pass.
And you insist that you were cutting down on royal expenses in the 1780s, but you continue to build palaces such as the Hamu and Petit Trianon. Why wouldn't you spend this money instead on bread for your people?
Well, at the time, we felt that perhaps that the crisis was making a recovery, and that maybe a few small expenses would not create further debt.
And you claim that you could not possibly pay the diamond necklace from Boehmer and Miss Sandys, and yet you continue to buy elaborate clothing and construct palaces. And wouldn't this money be better served helping out a citizen who is tricked instead of indulging yourself?
Concerning the diamond necklace, yes, I could possibly afford to pay that, but instead I was faced with the decision whether to cover my name and the cost that fell upon me, or to cover my name and further help the peasants and the French people. Those expenses it was a choice between either the French people or these expenses. Some of the expenses, yes, I did spend an exuberant amount of money, but we continued to try to reform the system. We continued to donate to the French people, and our tenure as a monarch, it was not filled with exuberant spending.
You claimed in your previous testimony that you could not have possibly had an affair with Rohan. Could you please read this passage from a temporary document? It's Exhibit D for jury.
A lover was then necessary. He had to be handsome, kind, and avowed. Everybody argued about this pregnancy. The women who were around her did not forgive her for having a lover.
So it is documented that one of your children is illegitimate, and yet how could Boehmer and Miss Sandys know for sure that you weren't in an affair with Cardinal Rohan?
They cannot be sure, but again, I have testified that I have been only with Lou. And that.
Oh, so why have there been several documented incidences, such as with Axel Ferguson, of you committing adultery?
Time.
Last question.
How could Boehmer and Miss Sandys be sure that you were not in an affair, and therefore, how can you blame them for being tricked?
These are accusations that were simply used to try to make up for the cost that this necklace cost. They were not. These accusations cannot be proved, and they were really just used to manipulate me.
You may step down. Please call your next witness to the stand.
Yeah, our defense calls Jack Necker.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Be seated.
Please state your name for the court.
I am Jacques Necker.
Can you tell us a little about yourself?
I was the Chief Finance Minister to Louis XVI and the Director General of the State Treasury.
Do you think King Louis XVI should be found guilty of treason by this court?
Treason? No, absolutely not. Louis is a good man, and maybe not the best leader, but, you know, being a bad leader is not the same as being a priest. It's preposterous. He appointed 100 ministers to important jobs, and it's really time that we start to take responsibility for our actions. So, you know, we told him to do a lot of these reforms, and, you know, we should really start to take some responsibility.
You mentioned his appointment of ministers. Does that mean that he did not rule by himself as one tyrannical leader?
No, in the modern world, it is common for these men to appoint many ministers to help them.
So the blame cannot be placed solely on him?
No, absolutely not.
Could you give us your expert opinion on the fluctuating bread prices?
As the bread crisis, basically there was many bad harvests, and you know, the bread, there was not as much of it, and you know, the bread is a staple of the peasants' diets, and unfortunately the price of bread rose to almost half of a peasant's wage. So you know, there was really nothing that Louis or myself could do anything about it, because first of all, the nobles, they blocked all the reforms, and you know, the obvious you can't control something like that.
Is it true that in France's laissez-faire economy, it is impossible to prevent the bread prices from increasing in those conditions?
Yeah, it was impossible.
Do you think Louis did a good job?
You know, he could have done better, but it was almost impossible for him to make any reforms, because the nobles in the form of the Estate General and the assemblies, they blocked all of his reforms, and he tried appointing me, but you know, we just couldn't get done.
Did Louis institute the laissez-faire system himself, or was it the wish of the people?
It was the wish of the people. That's what they wanted. They didn't want a strict mercantilist system.
Then because of all these external factors, could France have maintained a stable economy?
No, absolutely not. There were things like intangibles, like the weather. There were problems from previous leaders. There were tons of things. Also, the nobles, they were only interested in their short-term success instead of the long run. And, you know, they did not want to pay any taxes or anything. So, you know, there's not much you can do about that.
Did King Louis try to pass a fair taille tax?
Yeah, you know, me and him, we drafted a fair taille tax, and this was rejected by the nobles, because they did not want to pay any money to help France. They were safe.
If it had passed, would it have fixed the French economy?
Yeah, it would have certainly aided it. Maybe not completely fixed, but it would have greatly improved it.
If some people held the king accountable for his appointment of ministers, do you think he was successful in this area?
Yeah, you know, he appointed me, and I'm one of the greatest finance ministers of the modern era. Also, I know he's spoken out against the people who have succeeded me, like Grant and Cologne, but you know, they are actually very capable ministers, and you know, they are very smart.
Was this good? Were these good appointments for the long run?
Can you repeat the question?
Do you think his appointments were good in the long run for France?
Well, eventually I was brought back. I was exiled, and I was kicked out of my post and then brought back. But I believe that bringing me back was a good move, and it was hard because the nobles, they blocked everything that you tried to do, because they, in the short run, they didn't want to pay taxes, but then in the long run, you know, it would have saved France and made France a stronger country, and with a stronger country, there's stronger nobles, and without a strong country, there's weak nobles, so the nobles didn't even have their best interests in mind when they didn't want to pay taxes.
Why were you dismissed in the first place?
I was dismissed because I could not persuade the nobles to make reforms. They did not listen to me, and Louis even told me, he said that, you know, you're very confident, but I have to dismiss you because you cannot persuade these nobles to make any reforms. He thought a new face maybe might change this opinion, but apparently not when he brought me back. And my leaving was a storming of Bastille, so I mean, it shows that the people wanted me. Are you mad at him for doing this?
No. He had the best interest of France in mind, you know? And what can you do? Well, there's nothing wrong with the king who has the best interest of his country in mind. He was desperate to find somebody who persuades these nobles to go along with his reforms.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Now, one of the things you said is that you said the king cannot be directly responsible for any orders he has given because he cannot control his ministers.
I did not say that. I said he's not responsible for wrongdoings because his ministers don't.
Well, actually, when Drew questioned you, you said that he asked you that if the ministers, if he can blame Louis for what has happened, and you said no because all the ministers, he has so many ministers that tell him what to do and stuff.
Yeah.
But as you read here in chapter 2, section 4, clause 4, for only the highlighted 2 lines.
No order of the king may be executed unless it has been signed by him and countersigned by the minister or administrator of the Department of Government.
So doesn't that prove that Louis had a part in every reform that you did?
Yes, he had a part, but...
and that he accepted every reform that you did because he had to have signed.
Yes, but may I continue? Louis, as I said before, he may not be the best the best leader of France, but being a bad leader does not make you guilty of treason. It's preposterous, and also he depended on us, and if we gave him bad reforms, then that was our fault. We are the ones who first drafted it. Yes, he did have some part.
And didn't you say he was very capable of hiring capable ministers and talented ministers?
Yes, and we are very talented.
Then why then would he fire 4 ministers within 10 years? That doesn't sound very capable to me.
I told you we were capable, but it was impossible to persuade the nobles to accept our reforms. That's why he did it, because he needed new faces to come in and convince the nobles to reform.
But you were there twice. Why would he need a new face then? Why would he fire you because you couldn't get to the nobles, and then hire you again 10 years later?
Objection. I already asked and he already answered.
Yeah, this is all that's
Sustained. Continue.
And then, what were some of the reforms you had during your first time as financial advisor?
The tie tax that I mentioned, me and Louis tried to draft it, and they tried to reduce it and to shift some of the taxing to the nobles. But as I said, they were only interested in not paying taxes and did not care about France.
So then, when Louis fired you, you agreed with him, didn't you?
Oh, I did not agree, obviously, because that, I believe myself a very competent minister, but, I still do not question his authority. I believe that he needed a new face to persuade the nobles. And, I was very happy. I went back to my home, my chateau, and I spent time with my family.
And then, during your second time as financial advisor, you also had financial crises then. So, what did you and Louis decide to do to try and help us?
Well, you asked what we did. Let me just say, even if we could do something, it would be shut down by the nobles because...
Didn't you call the estate general into meeting?
Yes, we did call the estate general into meeting.
And how did that meeting go?
Obviously not too good because now Louis is on trial.
All right, well, what happened to France after the Estates General?
France after the Estates General? In what aspect?
Like the French people and the king. Like, what did they do? Wasn't this the first spark of the French Revolution?
I believe the storming of Bastille was the spark of the French Revolution. Is that what you're asking? I'm not sure.
Well, because you called together the Estates General.
Time.
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
What have you been doing?
5.
Whole time?
Just for the defense. Just for one discussion.
You may step down.
You're done.
That's 3. You did 3 for the other team, right? It's 5 minutes.
Really?
Well, you have to keep giving 5 minutes. That's not
All right, please call your next witness to the stand.
Your Honor, the defense calls Dauphin Louis XVII.
What did I say tomorrow?
You swear to tell the truth and the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Because last class they only had three.
Go back to me. Tell them.
How many witnesses?
What was the time?
That was checked. Would you give me three?
That's my question. So you were doing 3.
I was doing 3 the first
So
day.
go back to 3.
Can you state your name, please?
Yes, I'm Louis the 17th.
Tell us about yourself.
Sure, I'm the second son of Louis the 16th and Maria Antoinette. However, I am their oldest living son. I am also the Duke of Normandy.
How do you feel about your father being tried for treason?
Honestly, I am very scared and upset. I don't know what to think. He's always been a very nice man to me and my entire family. He's always told me that he loved the French people and never wanted to disappoint them.
How can you be sure about this?
As I was taught by many of my qualified teachers, that my father was the definition of loyalty.
What has life been like for you lately?
It has been good and bad at the same time. Most of my life has been spent recently in jail by revolutionaries with my parents. I enjoy spending time with my father, and it's funny to see the rats scurry all over the floor. However, my mother feels very uncomfortable. She doesn't like the rats. She says that they're very ugly.
Did your parents ever tell you why they tried to run away?
I'm not allowed to. They asked me not to explain that. They said it could be, it would be dangerous for my own safety. They always put me first.
It's safe for you to tell us.
Okay, I guess I could explain. Well, my mother said that many of the people of France were unhappy with my father. They didn't understand how much that they loved them. So they said that we were going on a little bit of a vacation. My mom said it was for me. My father said that there was a constitution that the French people weren't following. And so therefore, they took me on vacation.
Did he tell you whether this trip was temporary or permanent?
No, they didn't. However, they did tell me that we were going to some city. I don't remember the exact name. I do know it began with a V, though.
Did you know any of your father's financial advisors?
Do you mean Uncle Jacques and Uncle Romain?
Yes. Did they ever talk to you about trying to hurt French people in any way?
No, they did not. They always said that their ideas would benefit the French people, which was a key ideal of my father.
Did your father ever discuss these ideas with you?
Sometimes, but most of these ideas he credited to his uncle, to my uncle. My father loved to say one for all.
Did you ever see your father that much while he was working?
Not too much there because the king, being that he was the king, he was away most of the time I was home. He did manage to, however, come in and kiss me goodnight many nights. I loved him. In fact, I would consider him my hero. I loved every time I went to see him.
Did you ever see your father frustrated when he was working?
Yes, he was frustrated all the time. He said that the nobles were did not want to help advance the common good. I spoke to him many times as far as how to be a good leader when I came into reign, and he told me that the interest in the common good was the best thing.
Do you have anything that you need to add?
Yes, I do. Jurors, please don't accuse my father of treason. I love him very much. In fact, every night that he was away from my house, I would cry myself to sleep. Please don't make me cry myself to sleep for the rest of my life.
Do you consider your father a good man and a good king?
I consider him a great man and a great king.
No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Louis, you introduced yourself as king. Isn't your father still alive? So how could France possibly have two kings?
I do not recall introducing myself as king.
Louis the 17th?
Correct.
Last time I checked, princes do not have 17th at the end of their name. Actually, your name is Louis Charles, Prince Royal of France, if you want to
Objection relevance?
No, I see the relevance.
Can you inform the court how old you are, Louis?
Yes, I'm 8 years old.
Actually, you're 7, because your birthday's not until March, which is in 2 months.
Objection, relevance. That might be a little nitpicky, though. Continue. You should know his age.
So, as a 7-year-old, would you claim to be an expert on the French Revolution?
No, I would not.
And would your memory serve 2 years ago, Flight to Rent, when you were 5 years old?
I believe so. It was a great change in my life.
Let's test your memory a bit. Can you recall any one of your siblings? Any one of their names?
No, I do not.
Can you recall your maternal grandmother?
No, I do not.
I think we're testing his memory.
I'm
Five-year,
try that half-
7-year-old might not recall an event that happened 2 years ago when he was 5.
It was a great change to my
I'm going to
life.
allow this. I think I see where he's going.
So, would you remember an event 2 years ago when you were 5?
As I've already stated, it was a great change to my life. So yes, I do believe I recall it.
All right, Louis Charles, you were talking about how your dad used to talk to you about the nobles and the state of France. So, I assume that you have really long, deep conversations with your dad, the king, all the time as a 7-year-old.
As I stated before, he was not around a lot, but however, I did love him. So anytime he was home, I tried to speak with him.
Was Louis ever mean to you? Did he ever beat you or anything?
I'm not sure I know.
So, who was the last 7-year-old you came across who did not love his father as long as he didn't beat him?
I would say most 7-year-olds love their father.
So, do you think your judgment as a 7-year-old is superior to the judgment of every single citizen in France?
Your Honor, many citizens agree with Louis XVII's
Can I
position.
rephrase? Do you believe that your opinion as a 7-year-old trumps the of many very well-educated revolutionaries?
Do I believe it trumps? No, I do not believe that.
And you were talking about how your parents told you you're going on vacation with friends. Can you please read this document, the testimony of Jean-Baptiste Drouet, the highlighted part?
The district attorney questioned travelers who were they, and where were they going. A lady replied that she was the Baroness de Croft. The name appeared German. She said,
Yeah, you can just skip to the next section.
okay, asked if she had a passport. She said yes, but that she did not think it necessary to have examined it. We insisted while the passport was being examined. I said to the two ladies that I could not believe that the Baroness was foreign. I presume that the King and the Queen, who were in the Berlin, confessed that.
Can I ask one question?
Yep, sure.
All right. So normally when you go on vacation, you bring along fake passports, etc. Do you think your parents would really tell you, a 7-year-old, that you're fleeing France instead of going on vacation? Don't you think that they would say, not to make you afraid, oh, we're fleeing from revolutionaries, they'll kill you as soon as they see you? Wouldn't they instead say to a 7-year-old, just to get them off their back from crying, oh, we're going on a nice little vacation?
I believe I said that my father also explained that there were many men after him, and that there was a constitution that they were not following, and that was another reason. My mother was the one who said we were going on vacation.
Another long, deep talk with your father?
Yeah.
No more further questions.
Let me step down. That was good, guys. All right, you can start getting ready for the next block. Good job. Remember, we are second block tomorrow. We go into conference block to finish. Drew, how many more witnesses do you have? 5. Yeah, we should get done on here. Hey, we'll probably have closing arguments tomorrow, I would think. And maybe a verdict, jury. Ooh. You guys want to talk to each other today about what you're leaning towards. If we have time, we'll do it. Scott,
do you have a list of the witnesses? Yes.
I do.
State your name really quick, please.
My name is Edmund Burke.
Could you tell us a little about yourself?
I am Irish and I served in the House of Commons as a member of the Whig Party, and I am a writer and also a philosopher.
Are you against revolution in general or only the French Revolution?
I have supported the American Revolution because their rights have been violated, and George III has not been able to appease the people of America. And on the other hand, Louis XVI has tried to do many things economically for France, but the nobles have rejected some of his ideas.
So you supported the American Revolution despite being British?
Yes, I did, because even though I am British, I did support the American Revolution because some of the rights of individuals were violated.
What type of revolution is the French Revolution? Is it based on lies or false pretenses?
Well, the French Revolution is a rebellion against the French Revolution is the rebellion against tradition and monarchical power.
What do you think will happen to Europe if France falls?
If France falls, Europe is potentially endangered from foreign invasions from other countries.
How do you respond to the critics who say that since you're English, you want France to fall because you think it would help your own country?
Well, that's absurd because I've supported the American Revolution, so I'm an honest man, and because I have to tell the facts in my books and to inform the readers.
One of your books was entitled Reflections on the Revolution of France. Could you please explain to us how the ideas in this book show that the revolution is not just?
Well, in my book, I say revolution is a the revolution should be a parent of settlement and should not further more revolts. And if I believe this is where France is heading in this direction, because France is having a revolution right now, and I believe this will lead to more revolts.
If someone is able to dominate France, do you think they could take over all of Europe?
I believe so. I believe they can take over all of Europe, and they will where France is headed right now.
Is the revolution founded on sounded principles?
No, it is not. It's not founded on sounded principles.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
So you know about the American Revolution, right?
Yes, I do.
Do they have a king in America?
No, they don't.
And what are they trying to accomplish with the French Revolution?
They are trying to oppose the king.
Exactly. And you just said if they oppose the king, France will fall to other powers. America didn't fall. America's becoming more powerful. Why do you think France would fall since America has not?
I believe it's a different situation. During the American Revolution, the rights of individuals were being violated, but during the French Revolution, Louis XVI has tried to pass financial reforms, but the nobles have not accepted these reforms.
Have you ever been to France, Mr. Beck?
No, I have not.
How can we call you a reliable witness on what's going on in France? Arthur Young, who has traveled through France, has realized that there are many peasants who are living in mud hovels because the king cannot afford finances to help them.
Well, my book is based off of, because one of the young French aristocrats asked me to write an opinion on my view of the French Revolution, because he wanted me to join the French Revolutionary cause, but I went against it.
So you are writing a book solely on what you heard of the French Revolution and not of actual facts that you have seen?
Well, he said that I was just stating my opinion on the French Revolution. That's what he was asking.
Based on
Last question.
And then, how do you base this information that you wrote your book on, since you have not ever been to France or seen the condition of the peasants and the nobles?
Well, I've just heard on the brutality of France's conditions, and I just heard on what France is like.
You may step down. Please call your next witness to the stand.
Your Honor, the defense calls Pope Pius VI to the stand.
swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Be seated.
Please state your name first, brother.
I am Pope Pius VI.
And could you tell us a little about yourself?
As a scholar, I went to a Jesuit school and I became a priest in 1734, and I became the Pope in 1775.
Who are you loyal to?
I am loyal to God, the King, and no one else.
Why exactly did you come to testify for Louis XVI?
Well, I come to testify because of the I am against the revolutionaries because they are heretics, and I believe also that Louis is a divine right monarch.
How exactly is the revolution against the Catholic Church?
Well, for one thing, the civil constitution, it is absurd. I mean, it basically takes away all of my power as the Pope, and it forces the clergy to swear an oath to the state, and it also pays the clergy, basically taking away all of my power. And another thing that it does is it makes the clergy marry. It makes them allowed to be married. And this is strictly against the church because it brings up two crimes, the sins of adultery and the sins of polygamy, because a priest is essentially supposed to be married to the Catholic Church.
The civil constitution of clergy makes the clergy elected positions, correct?
Yes, it does.
And why is this against the church?
It is against the church because, you know, now a clergy, it may not be based on marriage. It may be based on how much money, like bribery or other things, and it doesn't create unity among the Catholic Church.
Have you heard of the proposition of the new calendar?
Oh, yes, I have.
And what's your opinion on it?
They try to take away many other Catholic holidays, like a Christmas, and this is terrible because how can a Catholic nation take away all the Catholic holidays?
You mentioned the civil constitution of the clergy. The defense would like to introduce excerpts from the civil constitution of the clergy. Could you read the highlighted portions, please?
No church or parish of France, nor any French citizen may acknowledge upon any occasion, or upon any pretext whatsoever, the authority of an ordinary bishop, or of an archbishop, whose see shall be under the supremacy of a foreign power, nor that of his representative residing in France or elsewhere. The ministers of religion performing, as they do in the first place, and most important functions of a society, and forced to live continuously in the place where they discharge. The salaries and money of the ministers of religion shall be paid every 3 months, in advance by the treasurer of the district. The law requiring the residence of ecclesiastics in the districts under their charge shall be strictly observed.
Article 4. Article 4 makes it appear that the civil constitution is trying to take away the church's role in society. Would you agree?
Yes, sir, I would.
And would you also agree that the clergy are becoming servants of the state through this constitution and not God?
Yes, sir, because they seem to be taking an oath to the state.
Thank you. Do you believe that Louis XVI has the best interest of his people in mind and had it during his reign as king?
Of course I do. I mean, Louis XVI, he is a Catholic king, and Catholicism is in the best interest of the people. And I have read books. You know, I do not claim to be a scholar on the subject, but it seems like the nobles are tearing this country down.
Do you feel that the revolution is trying to alienate the Catholic Church?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the civil constitution of the clergy strips all power away from me.
Are you aware that the civil constitution of the clergy essentially proposes to tax the church?
Can you repeat the question?
Do you know that the civil constitution of the clergy attempts to tax the Catholic Church?
Yes, it does. It taxes us on the lands that we have always held, and this is preposterous because how can you tax God's land? God gave this land to us, and he never taxed us anything, and now the assemblies and the nobles are trying to tax us, and to me it just does not make any sense.
Do you think God is on the side of the revolution or of Louis XVI? I'm asking his opinion.
Not hearsay, but
How can you know the opinion of God?
I'm asking his opinion of God.
Relevancy.
How about the Pope?
I think I'm going to sustain this objection on this particular question. You maybe could rephrase it to get away with it.
Okay.
You want to decide the papacy?
What side would church dogma appear to be in agreement with?
Well, the Church of Dogma would definitely be with the monarch.
Would you like to add anything?
No, I think I have made my point.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Pope Pius, would you say that you are testifying for Louis solely for personal gain?
No, not at all. Maybe for the gain of the church, but no, not for the church.
But you would say that by freeing Louis, the church would have a lot to gain?
As long as the National Assemblies and the other noble committees did not run the country, then even without Louis, I think that we would be okay.
But if Louis fulfilled his promises to the church to give back confiscated land and return power to the church and the Pope, would you not say that the church has immense ability to gain power?
Yes.
And would you say that you're an enemy of the French Revolution?
I would say that I'm certainly against the French Revolution because of the civil constitution of the clergy. But an enemy is kind of a stronger word.
Do you remember supporting the coalition that is set to invade France and restore Louis' power?
Yes.
Do you mind reading Article 3 of the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen? Exhibit D.
The principle of all sovereignty resides essentially in the nation. No body nor individual may exercise any authority which does not proceed directly from the nation.
So, based on this article and what you read from the Civil Constitution of the Clergy, would you say that the church has any power at all in France, the papacy?
That is, I would say, based on that document that I just read, no, but the thing with the papacy is that we do not mind the boundaries of countries. We are more of a unified ideal that people are supposed to believe in and put their faith in.
So, would you say that the papacy would have any right to support the king if it does not have any power in France, and the nation has already decreed that the church should have no power?
Yes, sir. Why would you not be allowed to support them? I mean, there are other people like Frederick who do not support them, so why should we not support them?
Did you support the murder of Hugo Basville on January 13, 1793 in Rome?
I am the Pope. I am always against murder.
So why did you tell your agents
to... Because we're not at that point in time yet where this is still late
January 1793.
The trial starts towards the end of 1792, in the beginning, so this murder may not have occurred yet.
Did it or not? What's the
It
date?
had the January 13, 1793, and the trial wasn't over until the end of January.
But it depends
It was
when.
executed in February.
Yeah, that's kind of a tough one, because you'd have to guess how long the trial took in order to, so I would have to say that's not allowed, sorry. Sustained. All right, so one more question.
Can you state any factual evidence? As you said, you're not an expert on French affairs, you're not an expert on the king's power, you're not an expert on what has happened during the king's reign. Can you give one piece of factual evidence that supports how the king did not commit treason.
How the king did not commit treason?
Yes, that is why we are in this courtroom.
Thank you. He had the best interest of his people in mind.
And any factual evidence?
He supported Catholicism.
You may step down. Please call your next witness to the stand.
Your Honor, the defense calls Christian Durand de Juan Malachur. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Be seated.
That was good.
Could you state your name, please?
Sure. I'm Christian Guillaume de Lamignon de Malachur, but I'm commonly known as Malachur. Just to clarify for citizen Zukowski, my birthday is December 6, 1721, and I'm currently 71 years and 3 days old. My paternal grandfather's name is Christian de Lamignon, and he died in 1736. My father's name is Guillaume de Lamignon de Mansicur.
Should Louis XVI be found guilty of treason?
Absolutely not. He did nothing. He did nothing to oppress the people. He did nothing to oppress the people of France. His reforms did not get rid of any inalienable rights of the people. If anyone should be put on trial for treason, it is the nobles who chose not to approve of Louis' tax reform.
Why did King Louis XVI choose you to be one of his ministers?
As you can see, I am very qualified by my numerous amounts of titles. During my work with King Louis, I have been Counselor of the Parliaments of France. I have served as the President of the Court of Aids in Paris. I was the Director of Press. I've served as Secretary of the State to the Royal Household. And in 1787, I was made a minister. Also, Louis and I share many of the same ideals and have the same ideologies. Together, we work together to improve prison conditions and the collection of taxes. It is important for a king's success to share a similar opinion with his minister.
What did Diderot say of you being director of an encyclopedia?
He said that had any other man been director of the encyclopedia, that his encyclopedia would have been banned. I was known to have done very little censoring.
Are you worried for your life in testifying for King Louis?
I believe in the expression all for one, so no, I am not. I see by me testifying, I see this as a key role of being a French citizen. I understand that royalists are being guillotined. However, they are fighting for the correct cause and should not be fearful.
So you consider it your duty as a French citizen to do this?
This is correct.
Do you and Louis XVI agree with the French Revolution?
I think what needs to be understood is the French Revolution in theory and in practice are two very different things.
Is France religiously tolerant?
No, I do not believe France is religiously tolerant. Revolutionaries say that they advocate religious toleration. However, they still confiscate all the Catholic Church's land. This is because the Constitution itself, the Constitution contradicts itself.
Do you agree with Robespierre saying that only atheists and deists are intelligent?
Can you provide the document?
No, I cannot.
Sustained.
Did Louis XVI want people to have a say in government?
Yes, he did. Although the revolutionaries said that the king tried to govern without the people, what needs to be remembered is that he was the first man since 1614 to call the Estates General into practice. He obviously wanted the people to have a say in government.
Could you briefly explain Louis XVI's attempts at tax reform?
Absolutely. Louis proposed a new fair taxation system. However, the people that once approved it, that once opposed it, now approved it. These are the same people who are putting him on trial for treason.
Are the revolutionaries following through with their plans?
No, I do not believe that they are following through with their plans.
What do you think of their two leaders, Robespierre and Marquis de Lafayette?
I think although they say that they are for the people, I feel that they are very power hungry.
The defense would like to present as evidence an excerpt of Robespierre's speech on the philosophy of terror. Could you please read the highlighted portions of the speech?
Absolutely. Your policy ought to lead the people by reason and the people's enemies by terror. Amid revolution, it is at the same time both virtue and terror. Terror is nothing but prompt, severe, and flexible justice. Subdue liberty's enemies by terror, and you will be right as the founder of the republic. To punish the oppressors of humanity is clemency. Therefore, woe to those who dare to turn against the people, the terror which ought to be felt only by its enemies.
What do you think of Robespierre's policy of terror, which he explains in this
Objection. This speech was made in 1794.
Did you give me a copy of the document? Yes.
There is a date in the textbook.
I don't know where I put that.
It's right in the center, all the way. Like
Here?
Yep.
There's no date here. Can you show me the date?
I don't think so.
You can show it, otherwise continue. Continue until you copy that.
Okay. What do you think of Robespierre's policy of terror, which he explains in this speech?
With this speech and regardless of the speech, I feel that although some feel that he's for the people and very helpful, I feel that clearly he wants to inflict terror, and by terror he wants to gain power.
So Robespierre is oppressing his people's opinions, correct?
In my opinion, yes.
You once said we would accomplish many more things if we did not get as impossible. What did you mean by this, and how does it apply to the revolution?
I feel that many people choose not to do things because they believe that it is impossible. However, I believe that anything can be accomplished. As far as the French Revolution, wasn't this a country that was once a dream? All we need is a dream, and anything can be achieved.
Okay, before we continue, I can now rule on his objection. He has just proved that that was actually from 1794. Could you show it to opposing counsel so they don't have any argument about this?
The book is not published.
Regardless of that, I still stand strong in my opinion of Robespierre.
The jury will strike that from the record and ignore that. Robespierre's speech. Cross-examination.
Now, Mr. Malachavez, are you aware of the Lettre de Cachet that Louis XVI put into effect?
No, I'm not.
Well, there were letters that said that Louis could place any citizen into jail without trial. And do you remember what your reaction was to this?
No, I do not.
You went to Bastille and freed hundreds of prisoners that Louis unjustly placed into jail. Now, could you still say that you're a supporter of everything Louis does?
I support most of Louis' ideas. I do not see eye to eye in everything, but I think in general we do support.
Well, and then many of these men, if you did not interfere, how long could they have stayed in jail?
Possibly a lifetime.
And there was no proof, no court evidence, no trial, or anything that put them in jail. Is that true?
Yes, it is. But I can. I would think that you would know as a human being that everybody makes mistakes and no one is can do everything right. So sometimes Louis needs guidance. This is why he has appointed ministers such as myself to help him make proper decisions.
Well, in your testimony, you said he did nothing to oppress his people. I think the letters of Cachet are a perfect example of oppressing hundreds of citizens by placing them in jail without even letting them speak on their terms.
I do not remember exactly saying that. If I did, however, I'd like to say that most of Louis' work was done for the people, and I can say the majority of his the reforms he did were for the people.
And you said the Constitution contradicts itself. Could you name an example?
Yes, the based off of things stated in the Constitution, it would advocate religious toleration. However, being that France is a Catholic nation, the revolutionaries still are taking land from the French people.
Yes, but that's talking about the revolution. This is a trial on whether Louis committed treason. Is there any evidence about anything that Louis has about the king's? Is there anything about the king's trial that contradicts itself in the Constitution?
I'm not sure what, could you repeat or rephrase the question? I'm not sure what you're asking.
Are there any articles in the Constitution concerning the law of the monarch or of a French citizen that contradicts itself, that could make Louis not committed treason?
I'm not sure.
You may step down. Please call your next witness to the stand.
Now, the defense would like to call Roman Dean to the stand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Could you state your name for the court, please?
I am a Roman man, Dave Yan.
Could you tell us a little about yourself?
Well, I was the president of the Assembly of Notables, and I was an archbishop and a cardinal.
You were an archbishop and a cardinal, so why are you no longer one?
I am an archbishop. I'm no longer an archbishop and cardinal because I took the civil clergy of the Constitution. And the Pope Pius VI asked me to step down from my position because it conflicted with the church.
The defense would like to introduce another set of excerpts from the Civil Constitution of Clergy. Could you read the highlighted sections of these excerpts, please?
Title 1. All titles and offices other than those mentioned in the present Constitution, of whatever kind and under whatever denomination, are abolished and suppressed, dating from the day of the publication of the present decree, and similar ones may never be established. Title 2. Dating from the day of publication of the present decree, appointments are to be made by election only. All elections should be by ballot and absolute majority of votes. Proclamation shall be sent to the king to inform his majesty of the choice. Title 3. During vacancies in bishoprics, accumulations of stipend attached thereto shall be deposited in the district treasury.
Would you agree that based on these titles, the clergy is becoming a political position?
Objection relevance.
Where are you going? I'm saying that because the civil constitution of the clergy is mixing church with state. Continue. Which, that it's becoming a political position with the elections and the informing of the king?
Yes.
Would you also agree that based on Title III, the church funds are being funneled to the state?
Yes, because in this document, in Title 3, it says the money should be deposited in the district treasury.
Thank you. Is France financially sound?
No, it is not. France's economy is very unstable, and this is largely due to the weather and bad cars in France.
So essentially it's based on external effects, external causes?
Yes, it is.
Over time, however, would you agree that the economy is slowly growing?
Yes, it is. It's been improving very much. And
so since the problems are external causes, would you say that Louis XVI is not responsible for this problem?
Yes, Louis XVI is not responsible at all. I mean, he's like God. I mean, he can't control the weather after all.
Louis XVI has been accused of overspending. Would you agree that this has been a recurring pattern, though, through the French monarchy?
Yes, it has. I mean, since the days of Louis XIV, they've been overspending on lavish things, but Louis XVI has cut down on his spending, and
But should Louis XVI be blamed for his economic policies?
No, he should not.
Has he done enough to combat this problem himself?
No.
What have you and Louis XVI done to try and fix these financial problems?
Me and Louis XVI, we've gotten rid of the oppressive court day. The and we have established the internal free trade.
Do you think Louis has committed treason in the way he handled the financial problem?
No, he is not, because he's just looking out for the common good of the people.
Do you think that the revolutionaries are fighting with Enlightenment ideas?
No, they're not. I mean, they're going around killing people, and the Enlightened ideas are for no death penalty, so I don't understand these ideas.
So would you agree then that if anyone is committing treason, they would be the revolutionaries?
Yes, they haven't been sticking true to the Enlightened ideas.
At this point today, how would you try to fix the financial problems that are facing France?
I would try to fix these problems because Louis should try to impose some taxes on nobles so they can be able to get out of this financial hole and be able to pay off some of these debts. Get out of this financial hole and be able to pay off some of these debts.
Why were these taxes never passed previously?
Because the parliaments have always rejected our tax reforms, and we can never get anything past the parliaments.
Why did the revolutionaries never complain of an unfair tax code?
Because they were always exempt from these taxes, and they never had to pay any of these taxes.
So do you feel that Louis XVI is being made a scapegoat for the problems in France?
Yes, he definitely is.
Did Louis XVI think of these financial reforms?
No. Many of his predecessors and I have thought of these reforms. Louis is not a financial advisor. That's why we have financial advisors to depend on, so we can come up with these reforms.
So the policies were not simply his own?
No, and if he's found guilty, the financial advisors should take the fall.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Now, you said that Louis couldn't pass many of his reforms to tax the nobles because they would deny it and shoot it down. Is that true? Or the nobles in control of the French economy? Are they in control of the king? Isn't the king the one who passes all the reforms? Does he have to listen to these nobles?
Yes, because there's a system put in place, and the parliament, the first and second estate, was always.
Well, it's the monarch. He's the divine right monarchy at the time. So couldn't he just pass a reform and say, you have to follow this, this is what I want, I am taxing you, you can't object?
There was a system put in place, so I mean, they would always reject it. And he was looking out for the common good of the people, so I mean, he was trying to find out what the people wanted.
And then in the past 10 years, which financial minister were you, approximately?
I don't understand.
Like, in the past 10 years, how many financial ministers have there been in France?
4.
4, exactly. Do you think that Louis is very determined for finances and he can't even keep one man in office for more than, what is that, 3.5 years?
I think he just wants to get it, since we are very good financial advisors, but we didn't get anything past the parliament, so I think he just wants to get a new face and to try to convince the parliament to pass the tax reforms.
And then you also said that many of the revolutionaries were against Enlightenment ideas. Well, this trial is about the Constitution and how Louis went against the Constitution and committed treason. How does that have to do with Enlightenment ideas? I see that you could say that the nobles are doing stuff, but we're talking about Louis here. We're not talking about the nobles.
Yes, Louis. I mean, can you just repeat that?
You were saying that while the nobles were going against the Enlightenment ideas during the Revolution, but Louis was going against the Constitution, which commits for treason. Enlightenment ideas is just an idea that was created.
I object to irrelevance.
That's completely
irrelevant.
irrelevant.
If the opposing counsel considered it relevant, he should have objected during the determination.
He doesn't have to. Where are you going with this?
I'm saying that Louis is going against the Constitution, which commits for treason, while the nobles just doesn't matter if they went against the Enlightenment ideas.
All right, continue.
So you're saying the nobles since the rules have gotten passed.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that Louis went against the Constitution. It doesn't matter if he went against Enlightenment ideas. We're talking about our French Constitution and that he went against it and thus committed treason.
Well, I don't think he committed treason because I don't believe he invaded any of the individual rights of men and friends.
You may step down. Please call your next witness to the stand.
Your Honor, the defense would like to call Junior to stand.
Remember, it is a 6-minute cross-examination if you so desire. But it would be happy to be done by 10:20 as well.
I tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I didn't lose.
Please state your name for the recording.
I'm King of 16.
Could you tell us about yourself?
I've been blessed to lead this lovely nation of France since 1774. Married to my wife, Marie Antoinette.
What was the state of France when you took over the power?
Well, when I was welcomed into my position, I was also welcomed with a weakening France. It was slipping as a world power. We had perhaps the biggest financial debt in history due to, in part, from the previous wars of Louis XIV. Our military was overextended and in debt because of the American Revolution and 7 Years' War, and overall France was not as in a high state as it used to be.
What was the cause of the major problem, which was the fluctuating bread prices?
Well, unfortunately, we had many bad harvests, and I unfortunately can't control the weather. I wish I did, and basic economic inflation caused prices to rise.
Who were some of your financial advisors, and how are they involved in the economic decisions that you made?
Well, first, it was important that I needed advisors because I am no expert in economics or financial matters. My first minister was Anne Jacques Turgot. We attempted to replace the corvée and balance the taxes among the classes. Unfortunately, though, our reforms weren't able to pass through the Parlement, so I had to dismiss him. At that time, I hired Charles de Calonne and Lomini de Brienne. Again, we tried to balance the taxes among the classes, completely eliminate the corvée, and try to deal with all the fluctuating matters in the economy. Again, they were unable to pass these reforms, but I had the ideas set in the minds of members of the Parliament and States General. So after I dismissed those, I hired Jacques Necker, and we attempted to pass reforms again, but again we were blocked.
Being a Catholic, what do you think of the civil constitution and the clergy?
Overall, I am opposed to it because we do not need to tax the church. There really is no need, and it's completely unnecessary. Really, our prayers are taxing enough, and it is not right to be taxing God or to be taking the land that belongs to the church, so I am opposed to the Constitution.
Who do you feel the clergy should be loyal to?
I feel that the clergy should be loyal to the monarchy in this case, and monarchy is on the side of the French people, so essentially we are trying to side with the whole French people as monarchy.
Why did you flee to France with your family?
Well, the most important reason was I feared for my life and my family's life. Many of the revolutionaries were getting out of hand and too extreme, so we attempted a temporary trip so that we could sort of catch our breath and realize what we needed to do. I did not intend to hurt the people of France at all, nor did I intend to offend them. I was simply fearing for my own life, and I was not abdicating the throne. I did not intend to.
So I'm trying to save your family, you're acting as a father rather than as a king in this case?
Yes.
Many revolutionaries have suggested that you are not upholding the Constitution. What is your opinion of this?
My main priority is that I please the French people, and a very large part of this is upholding their constitutional rights. I did not violate any of these rights. It was really the revolutionaries who violated these rights, not me.
Have you conspired with any other leaders against France?
No, against France, not at all, nor have I conspired with anyone. If I were to devise any conspiring, it would be against Great Britain, the common enemy of the rest of Europe. But I do often talk to the likes of Catherine the Great and French William II, because diplomacy is necessary in order to run the country successfully. And without diplomacy, then really we would be in ruins already.
Are you against just the French Revolution or revolution as an idea?
Well, I support the main ideas and philosophies of revolution, that the country would need change. But unfortunately, much of this revolution has gotten out of hand with too many extremists sprouting up. And so I do not support many of the details of this revolution.
You supported and aided the French Revolution, correct?
Yes. And the American Revolution too, because that revolution was called for. That was necessary. The people of America were being oppressed. But I do not think that the French people are being oppressed now.
So you do not feel that you have committed treason in any way?
No.
Would you like to add anything?
Yes. I'm innocent. Don't convict me. Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelled of elderberries. So, I know it's something like that.
Thank you.
Cross-examination, 6 minutes.
Citizen Capet, your previous testimony, you just said that you in no way conspired against the French nation and foreigners.
That's correct.
Do you care to recall exhibits G and I? King seeks foreign assistance, a letter written to Brediel, and a letter to the King of Prussia. Can you please read the highlighted passage? Letter to the King of Prussia.
I've just addressed myself to the Emperor, the Empress of Russia, the Kings of Spain, and of Sweden, and presented to them the idea of a Congress of the principal powers of Europe, supported by an armed force as the best manner to check the factions here, to give the means to establish a more desirable order of things, and to prevent the evil which afflicts us from being able to take possession of the other states of Europe.
So, by inviting foreign armies under the Kings of Prussia and other European kings, you believe that you in no way conspired against the French people?
It was not against the French people. What I did, I had discussions with those rulers because, as I said before, our military was overextended in debt. The most convenient thing to do, rather than to raise another standing army in a few short months, was to ask for assistance from other world powers.
So, by having foreign armies come in and kill your army, that's helping rebuild your army?
They were not coming in to kill our army. They were simply added as a security from all the extremist revolutionaries.
So you believe the battles of Valmy and others, when the Duke of Brunswick came in and invaded France, weren't killing your own people? Or just a peacekeeping force?
My intent was not to have him invade in such a violent fashion. I simply wanted him stationed there so that in case anything got too violent or out of hand, or any of the government was threatened, to simply stand guard.
Can you please read Chapter 2, Section 1, Clause 6 of the Constitution?
The king places himself at the head of an army and directs the forces thereof against the nation, or if he does not, by a formal statement, oppose any such undertaking carried on in his name, he shall be deemed to have abdicated the throne.
So, would you consider Prussians foreign?
Yes.
And would you consider inviting Prussians to invade France, opposing the invasions of Prussia into France? That's what I thought. And so, you claimed in your previous testimony that you in no way violated the Constitution.
That's right.
And you in no way committed treason. Now, you just admitted, you read a clause of the Constitution, you admitted that you broke it, rather flagrantly.
I did not admit that I broke it.
You just said yes.
I was not the head of that army, though.
It also says, if he in no way opposes a foreign invasion. And you just said that you in no way opposed by inviting foreigners to invade France. Would you say that you violated the clause? mind reading it again, please? Clause 6.
The king places himself at the head of an army and directs the forces thereof against the nation, or if he does not, by a formal statement, oppose any such undertaking carried on in his name, shall be deemed to have abdicated his throne.
Now, Lou, we've always known that you've been quite slow, but we would at least think that you could change.
As during the witness.
Sustained.
All right, could you please care to read that again?
Just address myself to the Emperor, the Empress of Russia, the Kings of Spain and of Sweden, and presented to them the idea of a Congress of the principal powers of Europe, supported by an armed force, as the best manner to check the factions here, to give the means to establish a more desirable order of things, to prevent the evil which afflicts us from being able to take possession of the other states of Europe.
So, in this letter you call the revolutionary forces of evil, and you invite a coalition of armed forces to check the factions here.
For a more desirable order.
Right, but you're inviting Prussia to invade France.
For a desirable order, I was not inviting them for the sake of invading, crushing revolt. I wanted to simply fix all the mistakes.
But you admitted it's invasion, inviting to invade.
Objection. This must be the 5th time he's asked that question.
Sustained, been answered. Been asked and been answered.
All right. You claim that the flight to Varennes was a mere vacation. Can you please explain why you're carrying fake passports and were escorted by a guard of counter-revolutionaries on your roulette?
Had our true intention been found out, we would have been killed on the spot by the revolution.
And why were you with a guard of counter-revolutionaries that were paid by you and were fighting against the advancement of France?
For the same reason, we feared for our lives.
Right. When you say that you have upheld your oath to be faithful to the law and to the nation's law,
yes.
But would you say that killing Frenchmen would be faithful to their liberty?
That's 6 minutes?
Yep.
Okay.
Faithful to their liberties.
Like liberty and pursuit of passport?
Yeah.
Do you care to read this clause, number 2?
The aim of all political association is the preservation of the natural and imprescriptible rights of man. These rights are liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression.
Do you think that by killing Frenchmen at Tuileries and Bastille, you violated their right to security?
No. In fact, I felt that I reinforced their right to resistance to oppression by trying to put down this revolution.
You may step down. Does the defense team rest?
Yes,
it does. We will now hear closing arguments. We will first hear from the defense team. There is a 3-minute time limit.
Jurors, King Louis XVI is not guilty of treason, for the prosecution has shown no reason. He was a kind, loving family man who at times was so poor he could not buy a fan. He and his family gave so much to charity in order to help create parity. To Varennes he fled so his family had a safe place to tread. He has upheld the Constitution. In fact, it has been his very own mission. He never stole the Catholic Church's land. Unlike Robespierre, he did not treacherously plan. Many fine financial ministers he did appoint. With many tax plans to France, they did anoint. Fair taxes he did propose. In order to save France, the Estates General arose. They greedily told him no. That day, he created many a foe. However, today the revolutionaries call for the same change. Yet this treason trial for Louis they chose to arrange. He did something his predecessors could not do. Along with the Americans, he gave the English something to rue. He beat them at their own game. Yet, did he ask for any fame? I think not. But some radicals still want Louis to rot. Some radicals say that Cardinal de Rohan was unfairly jailed. But these very same people delighted as they imprisoned the young Dauphin Louis, and as he ailed. As a parent, wouldn't you run far away in order to keep the angel death far, far away? Duty, honor, and respect. Those are just a few of Louis's great aspects. Now, let us not be despicable Englishmen. Let us rather be honorable Frenchmen. The English slaughtered Charles I, their king. Let us save our great king, and with pride sing. Oliver Cromwell started the English Revolution, but as a leader, there was a great devolution. After Charles's death, there was anarchy. Let us learn from history and unlock brand new doors with Louis as our key. And now, let us go forth, and along with Louis XVI, build our France of tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, citizen. We'll now hear from the prosecution.
I do not have a poem prepared, so I'll just tell you what I think. We, the prosecution, urges you, the juries, to find Louis XVI guilty of treason, for he has committed many crimes against the country, great country of France. The defense tells you that he did things the best he could under the conditions he was under. However, there are many things he did that were directly against the Constitution that he signed and swore to upheld. He abdicated his throne under 3 instances. First instance, he did not oppose foreign invasion. He, in fact, sent letters saying to the Prussian king to invite them to attack France and to end the revolution for personal gain for Louis XVI. Also, he fled from the country when things were getting bad. He feared for his own life, so he attempted to flee because he did not want to die. He left France under the help of Francis Claude Amour and Jean-Baptiste Boulle. These 2 men, counter-revolutionaries, helped the king plan his escape. And the third instance, he sent a group of Swiss soldiers led by Louis Charles de Hervelay against French citizens. This is not something a king would do, and this is directly against the Constitution. And under those 3 instances, he abdicates his throne and is now a French citizen, easily tried of treason. In addition to committing those 3 things, he decided to go even further. The king could not keep the economy intact of France, and while the peasants were rotting in the streets in mud hovels, he was living luxuriously in his palace. His wife, Marie Antoinette, would indulge herself with very fine pieces of jewelry and elaborate gowns, while he would walk through the streets of Paris and watch the peasants eat food from the floor and use mud as clothing. Is that how you want your king to act? Arthur Young, a traveler, an English traveler walking through, even noticed how terrible our country was doing under Louis XVI. I asked for nothing less than the beheading of our king, Louis XVI, for his treacherous acts against our great country and our beloved Frenchmen. He has done so much wrong to this country that I could not sleep soundly at night knowing he still breathed within our borders. Thank you.
Thank you, Citizen Teschler. The jury has now heard both sides and has deliberated every night of the trial. You are now excused to come up with your verdict. Remember that if you find the defendant guilty, he will be executed. You are dismissed.
Pretty nervous.
Will the foreman of the jury please read the verdict to the courtroom?
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of treason.
No. Now take